All right, well, let's call the meeting to order. I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. I also need a motion to approve the minutes from October 4th, if you had a chance to look through those.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any corrections, anything? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on any public matter that is not on the agenda of the meeting and is within the jurisdiction of the Teachers Retirement Board. However, the board may not take action on any issues raised unless it's included on the agenda and public comment has been allowed. If issues are raised that would require board action, the issue needs to be included on the agenda for a future meeting. Public matter does not include disability applications or contested cases and other adjudicated proceedings. We do have a member of the public, but you're here for another reason. And it is.
Great to be here, thank you.
Thank you for coming. And it's Brett, right?
Yes, that's
Yes, well, welcome and have a seat.
Step up, okay.
He's with our cybersecurity insurance.
Well, I love knowing that when I come over here, this is never the hot seat. It's more like a conversation with colleagues and people who are trying really hard to do a good job for the state and manage cyber risk. So it's just a pleasure to be here. And I thank Sean and the team for the invitation. So I'm Brett Dahl, Administrator of the Risk Management Tort Defense Division. And I thought I'd just share a couple quick experiences so you get a backdrop for kind of who we are and what we do. And so there's three things that we do. First, we purchase and maintain insurance for all the agencies and universities. 57 agencies and hundreds of boards, councils, commissions, 10 universities. So it keeps us pretty busy. We self-insure all of our liability risk because we can't buy commercial insurance. We've been doing this since the 1970s because the commercial industry took a look at our prisons, the operation of our highways, and don't want to go there, don't want to touch those risks. So the commercial insurance that we do have in place is with high deductibles. For example, on the cyber that I'm going to talk about today, the deductible is $250,000. On our property, that deductible, if you can believe it, is $2 million. So that's an important part of what we do is the insurance, specialty programs, because we have a lot of very specialized risk. State government is huge. The university system, they travel overseas. They do all kinds of things. They're kind of out of the box. So it keeps us very, very busy. So the insurance. Secondly, we investigate, evaluate, and resolve claims against state agencies and universities. We get about 900 of those a year. And so we have 5 staff and then it's 4 attorneys that manage our portfolio of claims. And they range from, snowplow, broken windshields, to cyber incidents, and I'll share some examples today, to the large building loss we had in Bozeman that you read about, that student fitness center collapse that happened in 2019. I was invited to go down there in August and they've got a beautiful new building. We contributed a lot from the insurance end to put that in place, and there were other things that were brought into the piece in terms of funds and fundraising to make that a state-of-the-art facility. So we were proud of that. We're proud to be there often at agencies and universities' worst moments. When, it's like, are we going to be able to rebuild this building? What are we going to do? And to kind of help put the pieces back together so that they can continue to operate. It's continuity is in part what we're talking about with their claims and insurance. And then the final piece is the loss prevention. We seek to identify strategies, programs, and processes to mitigate losses and risk, including cyber. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Just a quick story I thought you might enjoy. I go to these national conferences like many of you do. And you tell me, by the way, if I'm talking too fast. I tend to have a bit of a motor mouth when I speak.
I like it. It's great pace.
Thank you. I'll try not to trip on my tongue. But I have a friend that I met up at a conference a few years ago in Denver, Colorado. And this friend of mine worked for a school district. And he told me that they were having a problem with some of the students, especially some of the girls, blotting lipstick on the mirrors in the restroom. And this sounds trite, it's actually kind of funny, but they were apparently, you kiss the mirrors and you blot and you get all the excess off. And there were these lipstick marks all over the mirrors. And the janitorial staff were up in arms because it took a lot of time to clean the mirrors, wasn't sanitary. And so the principal called together the student leaders and the student council and took them and the janitor into the girls' restroom and started talking about the problem and the damage it was doing and how it was inconveniencing the janitorial staff. And the janitor that was standing there by the mirror grabbed his mop and he went over to the toilet. And he stuck his mop in the toilet and went to the mirror and cleaned off the mirror with his mop. And his friend told me they never had any problem blotting on the mirrors. I think the lesson was learned, and I thought that's a pretty creative way to manage risk. So we've learned that we're only limited by our creativity, right or wrong, whether that was a good or bad approach. It seemed to work in this particular school
I
district.
think it's.
Yeah.
We're looking for ways to mitigate the footprint and the losses and the claims and to more effectively insure them. The state of the industry isn't good right now. Insurance is expensive. Haven't you all seen your commercial insurance on your autos and your homes?
At an
Go up.
absurd rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone up a lot. Your state insurance hasn't gone up. The legislature has worked with us to keep your rates intact. We won a large settlement 2 years ago in 2022. And the size of that settlement was over 100 million. So we're able to take and parlay the return of that money to our fund and implement a premium holiday for 25 and 20, or 24 and 25. So there was no premium assessment from our division to any agency or university, which is a good thing.
Huge.
And then we're looking at a pretty good rate package in 26 and 27. So rates aren't going to go up. They're going to be half of what they were 4 years ago. Not to say that down the road that won't change, because insurance is going up. But we're doing what we can to be a good player and recognize that that's a form of an increase when you're talking about assessments that our clients have to pay. So we're doing our best to manage risks, keep our costs down, and to reduce that footprint.
Yeah. Mr. Dahl, can I ask this? The cybersecurity business is fascinating because it's so rapidly changing and moving. It must be an incredibly complex underwriting process to try to figure out what your risk actually is. And the reason I bring this up is just wondering, how confident are you that you say the rates are going down by 50%. That must be the result of underwriting comprehension of what these risks entail. So has your organization been around for a long time?
We have been around. Yeah, the risk management for our division has been around for 40 years. I came here and kind of was asked to kind of get it up and running, and I've been here with the state 35 years. Okay. With a very stable group of people and some very, very highly qualified and specialized training that the people have. But the overall, the 50% I was talking about is mainly because of that settlement. We got all that money, so we gave 2 years of nothing assessments, and then we're able to keep those premiums about half of what they used to be. That's mainly because of the settlement. But in terms of the cyber risk, and addressing that question, it's an excellent question. Our cyber rates are stable. And I'll talk about the market conditions and some of that a little bit later, but they're stable because we have such a good underwriting process. We have an outstanding Chief Information Security Officer in the Information Technology Group. And they spend a lot of time on those apps. Sean, you don't like apps, none of us like apps, none of us like to do paperwork, we don't have to. But the carriers require it. They want to know what we're doing. They want to know where the problems are going to be. And they have a lot of questions. So the answer is, yeah, it's exhaustive and it's comprehensive for both the state and university system, but our people do a great job, and that's kept our premiums stable.
Thank you.
For the first time in quite a while.
And by the way, Sir John Gielgud. That's the man you look like. I just looked him up. You guys could be twins.
Well, he must be a handsome devil.
Very.
Okay.
And it says also witty and charming.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Sharing an actor, that's great. My wife will laugh when I tell her that. Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain. If I don't get your names right, your titles, Senate, House, or whatever, please forgive me. I mean, I'm meeting you for the first time. You're all new, and the respect is there. And I'm not going by for the record and all that stuff, because this is a presentation. And if I'm out of Robert's Rules of Order, Sean.
Oh, no, you're completely fine.
More of an informal discussion presentation for your.
We appreciate it.
So I'll just segue into the slides, and if we can go to the next slide next. You know, I'm a risk manager. We all have disclaimers, you know. And the disclaimer is that some of the material today in my presentation may represent our opinions, and in fact does. as opposed to what our privacy counsel, our insurance carrier's attorney would say, or the insurance carrier. They're not contrarian things that I'm saying. But if I get out there and look something's a little left of where they might be or right of where they might be, just know that, it's part of the presentation process. And I'm answering questions and representing material that I've researched and they provided me with, so I'll do our best today. Next. So the agenda, we'll hit a number of important things today. First of all, I want to talk about personal and private information security, trends and threats, really what's at stake. We have a cyber incident, cyber breach, they have it here if they do, and you're very well managed and led, the staff here and the people that are in IT, so we've never had a problem here, or even with our public employee retirement system. They seem to get this stuff and they seem to take it seriously, as do most of our agencies. What's at stake, we'll talk about that. What are the costs? We'll give you some examples and talk about some made in Montana incidents that we have been involved in. We'll talk about insurance. Incident response is probably the most important piece because you're on the board and you work closely with Sean and his staff. So that you're all in the know on what to do if something happens, and we're there for you to make this really simple. And we vet it through the proper people so that your good names and reputations, and basically more than that, we're protecting our clients, we're protecting the retirees, we're protecting the state employees and the university employees and their data. That's really what we're talking about. That's what's at stake. And then risk management with some questions at the end. So with that, I'll dive into, first of all, personal and private information. So security breaches, I use the term breaches in quotes, and we'll talk a little bit about how we want to be careful with that term because it does have legal significance. But they may result, I think you all know, in identity theft and require disclosure mitigation. I'm just curious, have you ever received one of those letters? Your data may have been compromised and you're offered, you're giving your belongings some credit monitoring.
Yes.
I haven't for a long time, but there's been a time or two, and maybe some of you haven't, but you get a letter, some organization, the Target breach was big, they sent something out to practically all of their customers when there was that breach, saying, your data could have been compromised and it could have been accessed, so we're going to offer you credit monitoring and some other identity theft protection services. Needless to say, it happens, and it happens more often than we want. These terrible things could happen, and it's not just people go out and send you phishing emails. It's amazing how intelligent these people are and how they can hack and break in through various techniques into our systems and extract in a very precise and deliberate way important private and private health information. Personal and private information is protected by laws in 47 states, District of Columbia, and U.S. territories and federal law. And what makes this a little complicated, folks, frankly, is that the laws in the states are different. They're not all the same. What constitutes a breach in Montana is different in Utah.
But we are one of the 47 states.
We are one of the 47 states that has cyber information security laws, and we have pretty good laws. Pretty good laws that give us a little more flexibility and maybe just a little bit stronger protection than the requirements in some other states. So I think, again, the information technology people have worked really hard to have good legislation in place. The laws vary, as I mentioned, between jurisdiction, and just as an example, there's limited precedent. There's not a lot of these that happen. When they happen, they can be big or they can be small, but they are very public. Do you remember hearing about the incident down at MSU Bozeman, the ransomware attack down there? I was notified actually the day after they sent the National Guard in. The governor's office did out of concern for what they might have been able to get, and I'll talk a little bit about it. It's still open, I can't go into depth, but that's just one example. I mean, when stuff like that happens and people are thinking, that's my data, it gets attention. And again, more important than trying to avoid the spotlight is protecting the citizens and the students' information and making sure that nothing is done to harm them. So as an example, what does access mean? The statutes in Montana, for example, say they define what an unauthorized disclosure means, but there are some that can be interpreted in different ways, and it's different in different states. Then the laws usually say notify within a reasonable period of time. If you've disclosed information, you need to let people know. You need to tell the people who are affected, the students or the teachers, or the state employees or the citizens, they need to notify within a reasonable period of time. And in most states, that's just left at reasonable. What's reasonable? Because if it's not reasonable and it's like a year out, the Federal Office of Civil Rights gets involved and they'll levy regulatory fines and penalties if they don't think the response was reasonable. And that can be expensive and painful if it's not done right. Continue, thank you. Next slide. So per the Montana Code, personal information, 1501 means first name or first initial and last name in conjunction with the following elements. So any record, anything that has a first name or first initial and last name isn't in and of itself a unauthorized disclosure. We don't use the term breach. We'll talk about why in a minute. But it could be an unauthorized disclosure if in conjunction with first initial, first name and last name, there's a social security number. Then it becomes problematic. Or there's a driver's license number. And if you want your driver's license number, your social security number is out there for people to see. None of us do. It's pretty private stuff. Account numbers or debit or credit cards. Medical records is defined in 3319-104. Taxpayer identification numbers under 5 and then 6. An identity protection personal identification number issued by the Revenue Service as part of our taxes. So the name in combination with any one or more of those following then rises to the level of a potential need to disclose and notify people who are affected. B, personal information does not include public information that anyone can get. We have access, don't we, to public information on state employees, agencies, revenues, salaries, other things. So it doesn't include public, federal, state, or tribal governmental records that are available already. So that's excluded by statute. Next slide. So the term breach has legal significance. What do you think of when you hear the term breach? Is that kind of an ugly word?
It's like a break-in.
Yeah, like a break-in. Exactly. That's what Danny mentioned, what Mr. Chamberlain mentioned. That's what I think of. That I'm gonna bust it in. It's a breach. It's a violation of your privacy, sort of. But it means the definition varies based upon different applicable state and federal laws, but we refer to those as incidents. So when we get the call and someone says, there may have been a breach, we're pretty careful to say, let's use the term incident, because breach may denote wrongdoing or fault or negligence. And what we have found in some of our cyber incidents, when we get the reports of an incident, we'll go in and we'll do a forensic investigation and we'll find that they got into the system, but they couldn't find the tracks of the beast. There was no evidence. They went into databases, they got into private or public health information. So they're probably proud they busted in, and sometimes that's just a challenge on some of these Chinese and Russia hacker websites. It's like, see if you can get into the state of Montana's or another public system, and it's kind of like a game with some of these cyber ransom networks. So if they get in, that doesn't mean there's a breach. And so we don't want to be out telling the media or other people it's a breach until due legal diligence has been done and the attorneys for the insurance carrier and the state have gotten involved and made that determination. So the second bullet, for purposes of reporting potential incidents to the Department of Administration, we are the Risk Management Tort Defense Division of D of A. Breach means the unauthorized acquisition of data or information, and these two are very important. A, that material compromises the security, confidentiality, or integrity of personal information maintained by an agency or third party. So it does include independent contractors and third parties. So if a material compromises the security or confidentiality of that personal or public health, private health information. And secondly, this is important, some states don't have this standard, it causes or is reasonably believed to have caused harm. And there are some jurisdictions where if it happened, you notify. Here, in our statutes, it is caused or reasonably believed to cause a loss or an injury. Does that make sense? Does it give you kind of a good introduction to what personal and private information is? And at this point, before I move forward, if you don't kind of get a basic, since I probably failed, and this is somewhat complex and technical, but, you know, I'm happy to address anything you might have to this point. It sounds like,
I have a minor question. A couple pages earlier, it said first name, it's identifying the information that could be compromised. Under number 5, it says a taxpayer identification number.
yeah.
Here's my question. Normally, for an individual, that's just your social security number. But a taxpayer ID number on a business is public information. So what would be a taxpayer identification number if not one already publicly available as a business or as a social security number?
You know, I'm not sure, and I wonder if when the law was drafted, it was just meant to kind of be broad.
Okay.
So I mean, I think where it's left is that if it's public information, and maybe one of you have a thought about that, but I think if it's public,
Is there another number?
There, well, so
Yeah.
what, we have, some, like Philippine teachers that they don't get issued a social security number, and the only way that they are tracked is through a tax
Tax
ID.
ID number,
Ah.
so they can
So
actually work.
they are based
yeah.
on, sometimes on an individual.
Got it.
Yeah,
Didn't know that.
might be their own identification.
application number, yep, that's assigned to them while they're
Very
in the
interesting.
US,
Okay,
yep.
thank you.
So some of our Filipino teachers that have come over to work in our system don't get social security numbers?
Correct,
Right,
yep.
but they are assigned a
They're
tax ID
assigned
number.
yeah, from the IRS, they get a tax ID number. I mean, we've dealt with many of them, and, you know, when we're setting them up as active members, or we're getting ready to pay out the contributions because they're heading back home, and they're not issued most of them aren't issued a social security number.
Because they aren't citizens?
Right,
I guess so, yeah.
This is a really interesting, so in my situation, I'm taking them down to get a social security number. Shelby was
Well,
one
I
of the
mean,
first
and maybe
schools.
it's a matter of, you know, whether they go through that process or not, but, if they don't have one, they always have a tax identification number if they don't have a social security number, so I'm not.
So one of the reasons why I'm asking this is OPI set up a new system, and to get a license, you can't even get into the system until you have a social security number. So you can't get a teaching license now.
Okay,
You
well-
could 3 years ago.
Right.
But
Maybe we won't
starting
run into that then.
Starting 2 years ago, you could not get a teaching license until you had a social security number, and I'm arguing with OPI right now. Hey, I've got a couple of teachers, they're working on getting their license. Unfortunately, they don't have it yet because I couldn't even get into your system until they got a social security number, and so it just pushes everything out.
Sure, well, it's entirely possible too, with all the changes that have happened with immigration laws in the last few years, that they've opened that up to where they now can get a social security number while not being a citizen.
yeah, but where I think we see it probably more predominantly is with substitute teachers, not necessarily your tenured, full-time teachers. So,
Substitute
Subs,
Filipino teachers.
yes, yes. Nolan, you've probably processed.
Yeah, but I
Multiple
do feel
withdrawals.
like, Member Crum said, you know,
Yeah.
there's
It's changing.
more, there's more social security numbers. So we'll all tell them to wait to report them until they have a
Yeah.
social, you know?
I mean, I can give you an example. I just had to request a copy of a person's ID because we had 2 accounts associated, because they were reported with one number and then the next following month reported with a different number in the middle. Got a copy of the social security card. Well, it was actually a tax ID number that just says it's valid for them to work in the US, and it's like it's a 9-digit number, just like your SOCH, but it's not a social security number.
So the numbers that I could be getting numbers that aren't social security numbers.
Yeah, I'm, maybe so, but in this circumstances, it definitely was not. And this person was a substitute teacher and was trying to withdraw after that point, so.
How did they get into the country to do that?
I mean,
Well, they get a work visa.
Visa,
and
yeah.
then- like I said, a lot has changed, under the federal administration in the last few years. So, I mean, it may be that a few years ago, you could not get a social security number, but they'd get a work visa and a tax ID number. But it sounds like now they're able to do the work visa and a social security number.
yeah, I don't,
As a non-citizen, that's shocking to me.
yeah. I think they would have to become citizens. I think that, I don't know.
Well,
I mean, we're
it
not
sounds like
experts in
he
that
has,
areas,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, maybe they
Yeah,
are.
I've
I
been
don't
working
know.
through this system for the past 8 years, and it has changed dramatically over the
Yeah.
past 8 years, but I'm really surprised to hear that don't have to get social security numbers, and then they're able to do a variety of jobs, because I know the employees that I bring over from the Philippines, once they're working in the school system, they're not allowed to do anything else. They're not allowed to go work for any other employer.
Yeah.
They have to work for me,
Yeah.
and that's their only form of income, and they're
Yeah,
legally not allowed to do anything else.
Yeah.
And they have to go get a social security number before they start. So it's a,
yeah,
Well, I didn't know I was opening such a can of
Yeah,
worms.
it is,
Well,
isn't it?
yeah,
It's a good discussion to have,
Yeah,
Charles.
absolutely.
I've enjoyed hearing it, and I learn,
Yeah.
when I do these discussions, we learn a lot, because every client's different, every organization's different.
Yeah.
The thing, just to assure you, is that, in these situations where there's, where we get the report of incident, we work with insurance carriers. We first of all work with counsel, legal counsel, so, if something happens here, they're gonna call us and let us know, and we work with Sean, legal counsel, let the board know. And then we get, and we try to keep the nexus of involvement in terms of the initial evaluation at a level where, the people that are involved need to know, and then the forensics is often done. And, it elevates to the attorneys, we call them privacy counsel for the insurance carrier, and they're expert in all these different state laws. Thank God we have somebody that knows all the different state laws and how it all works, because they're various and they're different. So we have people in place to make that interpretation, kind of look at all that data, and then individually, based on the facts and circumstances, decide based on the statute if it rises to the level of a breach. But the backdrop behind it is interesting, is look at the laws, so kind of, and I know the staff here do, they're great to work with. We haven't had incidents or problems here with working with Sean or Denise or anyone, but they know what to do and who to call, and it's like, let's give them a call, and then from there, we elevate and escalate. We'll talk about incident response a little bit later, but that's the backdrop behind the statute, and that triggers whether or not there's an unauthorized disclosure. So I guess that takes us next to information and security trends and threats. You're all talking about data and personal and private health, and now that's all changed. Now it's so different. The world that we lived in, coinciding with that, is just so much different, isn't it? We're talking about AI. When I came and did a presentation at the board a couple of years ago, AI was barely on the table. But, it's big now. Chatbot, AI, all the different data that's out there, automation, data analytics, those were terms that were used differently, or if at all, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So there's that going on. Technology changes, and our dependence on technology that make us more vulnerable to cyber threats. My wife was joking with me, she says, you gotta get there on Cyber Monday and go get these things because of the Christmas holiday. I don't like that term, Cyber Monday. To me, it's kind of like, if you say it enough, is something gonna happen?
yeah,
I go shopping on Amazon Prime, I pick up a few things, and then my local too. But that just, we're having a Cyber Monday event at some point. Secondly, heavy reliance on third parties and business partners. I don't know how it works here, Sean and Tammy, but I don't know if you're using more independent contractors or the same, or that hasn't changed. But many organizations are outsourcing and or more dependent on independent contractors. So it's one thing for the state to have a really good information security system and protocol, but when you're talking about your independent contractors, you can't be as certain because you're not exerting control over them. And we've had a few claims where there were incidents involving independent contractors, albeit small. We had one claim where an independent contractor doing work for an agency had closed and left the computers at its place of business. So when someone got in and accessed, there were 5 computers only, so it was a small amount of data, but didn't think to get rid of the computers or do something with the computers. They were left in the old offices, and they were accessed. So just as one example. Evolving cyber regulatory requirements, various regulations, and a focus on mandatory, including data protection, breach notification, privacy, and controls. The Federal Office of Civil Rights they investigate, they get involved when there's these incidents. I think if there's over 500 incidents they've been involved in a couple of the cyber incidents that we had. And they don't like coming in and seeing that you're not responding correctly. You don't have protocol in place. We had a cyber incident in 2016 involving the Department of Public Health, where threat actors come in to their systems, and we did the forensics, and the forensics showed that there was no evidence that that the Chinese hackers actually got in and exfiltrated data. But out of an abundance of caution is the term the governor and his staff and then the director of public health used, and the legislature felt the same way, we should notify. So we notified 1.3 million current and former residents of the state of Montana in 48 days. So, and those weren't staff that wrote those letters. We have vendors and we have people that work for the insurance carriers that are trained to respond and to deal with response letters, to set up call centers, the attorneys that look at the incidents. It's quite impressive. But I mean, so those privacy controls are big. Legacy structure, I don't know if you use legacy data or information technology. There are a lot of systems out there. We have one. So you got some of these old legacy systems, and we're modernizing to make sure ours are cyber secure. But, and we think that most state IT systems are, but think of the many organizations who are out there who may not have legacy systems, older systems with older programming that they're still using that are updated and have the appropriate security controls in place. And then the final two, constrained resources and economic uncertainty. Not every organization has risk management people or cyber IT resources. Some of them are small. Montana has a lot of small businesses. And I think we'd all agree that a lot of them don't have an IT cybersecurity staff or the expertise to deal with cyber incident response and insurance. What we try to do from our end is work with agencies and boards and councils and commissions like the teacher's retirement system to make sure if they're contracting with someone that they require them to carry cyber insurance, so that if something happens, their insurance carrier can respond and help them correctly approach that situation. And then attractive targets for cyber, government's a big one. Higher education and retirement systems are in the mix because of all the amounts of private health information that we have. Next slide. Some interesting information security trends and threats in 2024. A survey conducted by cyber information security firms, and our insurance consultant is Alliant Insurance Services. They're a large multinational broker out of California, but with offices worldwide, participated in that survey. And so this survey it's broken down by sector, but these are the percentages of sectors by sector that felt that they were prepared, very prepared, to respond to cyber risk in 2024. So I don't put this up there to scare you, but I mean, healthcare, I think at the top of the list is financial institutions, tech and media, technology at the very far right, you'll see tech and media. Of course, technology companies are more attuned to cyber risk and more familiar and probably have more resources. But the public sector is among the lowest in terms of feeling that they're prepared in the eventuality of a cyber loss. I would think that we're the exception because I think that we have great people over in the information security office and in IT that work with your information technology people and all of our technology people to address these risks, to roll out new software and new approaches to manage it. And they're doing a very good job, in my opinion.
Do you think that that 33% for public sector and education has a lot to do with they are concentrating on other things besides and perhaps don't know about?
That's an excellent question. I don't really know why so few, why we're at the lowest percentage in terms of feeling like, not we, but collectively public sectors feeling like they're prepared. I think it's because there's just so much data. If you think of the state of Montana, everything from driver's license to information that you house and hold, the public health records. One former CIO from the state of Montana told me that we probably have data on 70% of the citizens and students, just because, I mean, government touches a lot of what we do and how we live in terms of data that it requires for everything from driver's licenses to taxes and whatnot. So that may be, it's just so much out there that maybe that's one of the reasons. It's kind of like, how do you eat an elephant? How do you wrap around it? When it's that big. I don't know See if that answered your
I,
question.
well, I just think a lot, when I think of
It's a good
education, I think of the classroom teacher. I don't think the classroom teacher is worried a bit about cybersecurity.
They're not.
They
about
have
that.
bigger problems.
Although we get in trouble, like, they send us these little emails, and then if you click on it, you're in trouble, and then you have to take a training, so we do think about it now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we get test fires all the time,
Oh.
phishing tests.
Yeah. If you clicked on it, you're in trouble, and then you have to take a 35-minute class.
Madam
Oh,
Chair.
man, yes.
I guess, Member Brown, I think, my opinion is that as public sector, we're more aware of the repercussions of loss of data because of the regulation that we're faced with. And I think the fact that the IT sees itself way more prepared represents the fact that as IT, we feel like we're the best at what we do until we're not.
Right.
But as public sector, we're so aware of all the repercussions of what happens when we mess up, that our opinion of our preparedness is reflected here as being lower, and the opinion of the IT is that we're actually more prepared. I don't necessarily think these represent true preparedness. I think it shows how we feel about our preparedness.
Perceptions of preparedness.
And the public, it doesn't surprise me that as
That
public
makes
sector, that we
sense.
see we're evaluating ourselves so low, just because everything we talk about is the fact that if we lose this, we're in trouble.
Perception,
I believe that's what the case is.
all right.
It makes a really good point, and I'm not sure that this survey and all these responses reflect what the IT professionals in those sectors actually think. I think it was a pretty broad survey that cut across everything from management, to tech people to others. So I totally agree with what you said, and that's a really good way to put it. I mean, it's sort of this humble, we're doing a lot, but boy, it's out there. It's out there. I mean, I like bow hunting, and I kind of use the example in Montana. If you put a target out in the middle of the field 200 yards away and you start shooting arrows at it, are you gonna hit it the first time? Probably not, but you'll eventually get lucky, and if you shoot enough arrows, at some point it's gonna land on the target. And that's kind of the way I view these attempts at cyber intrusions. They're shooting into the wall, they're shooting the arrows out there, and at some point in time, there are so many attempts. I'm told that there are, I don't know what they are now, maybe you have a handle, but 50 million attempts a month to get into state systems. Our CIO may say more, but people are out there finding the arrows at the data and trying to get in. And fortunately, they got some pretty good defenses in place. But every now and then an arrow gets through the defenses, and we want to be prepared to respond.
Okay, we probably should take that public sector down to 20.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing about that is public sector is pretty wide encompassing, right? I mean, state government is one thing. We have a lot of resources we've dedicated to this, but every local government, every single school district, they're all standalone, and they're not gonna have the resources to put.
You're talking about a small Class C school district
Right.
that has maybe one full-time administrator
Yeah.
with 4 or 5 teachers. There's no IT person, there's not.
Right.
No.
They don't have anybody overseeing this type of situation.
Those are all really good points, and it's interesting to hear the discussion. And when I go into the discussion of some of the examples, you'll see a little bit of that. You'll see how innocently some people, that's just, they get an email or something goes out there, and they're focused and they're busy and they're doing the work of their clients. And it's just, you're not thinking, well, what's this? I had one come to me last week, and I looked at the email address, and it wasn't a .com, a .net, or a .org. It was some other weird ZDU address, and I thought, okay, I didn't forward that to our information security people. I knew right away that it was fraudulent. They're trying to get me to click, take the bait, and then, access my system. So, anyway, just not to alarm people, but that's just, I think what he said is true. It's just the perception, not that it's the reality. I think the public sector is doing better than we give ourselves credit for. There's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
Thank you for the discussion. Next slide, please. Continuing in the trends and discussion there. So ransomware, ransomware claims are on the rise. You kind of pull that out of the mix of why we have cyber incidents. And what a ransomware claim is someone gets you to take a phishing message, or they send you material, or it's socially engineered, and they get into your systems or claim that they have gotten into your systems, and then they demand money, or all heck is going to break loose. We've only had 1 or 2 of those, over the past 15 years since we started our cyber insurance programs. And I'll share with you a little bit about how that went as we get into some examples later. But they continue to increase. They're up 102% from August 22 to August 23. And by the way, this is the latest data which we have. We don't have 24. You know, there's a lag period reporting, but during that period of time, they were up 102%, which is why our premiums were going up. They've gone up a little bit the past 3 years, and that stopped last year. We stabilized, and this year they're going to be stable. But they were on a slight increase and a slight trend up because of ransomware claims. It's a big thing. It's the biggest part of the cyber incident and breach market and where it's all happening. Going down to increase in average, well, 22, I'll move right. Ransomware activity is abnormal, and you know, our consultants and the people in the know, and I'm not an information security expert, I'm an insurance dude. I work with insurance. That's kind of my forte. But they say that the invasion of Ukraine had an impact in terms of the data that and the attempts to infiltrate, to break into systems, and that the frequency and severity in 2022 was still high. So it's hard to kind of attribute to that one event like that war, but that's what people that are in the know, that are in information security, are saying is that in part had something to do with it. If we go down to the bottom under the increase in average initial ransom demand, this is what the threat actors, we call them, are asking for in terms of the ransom. In 2003, it was 2 million, and that's up almost 1 million, almost double what it was in 2022 and 2021. The increase in the average ransom payment is up 70% from 21 to 22. So they're emboldened, and not only are these claims occurring with more frequency, they're asking for more. They're asking for more money.
And the companies are paying, or the insurance is paying?
We don't.
Yeah.
There are organizations, when they get a ransomware claim, and I mean, if you're a technology company, you have stuff that's highly sensitive and highly technical, there are some organizations that their insurance coverage covers ransoms. Our insurance coverage does pay ransoms, but we, as a matter of policy, in the university system, it's not a place we want to go. We had this incident with MSU Bozeman. They were given a choice. They met with the privacy counsel, with the attorneys. We all had the discussion. We're not gonna pay that ransom. No way. And I think that's kind of a Montana approach. We don't let people, hold us hostage or put a gun to our head and demand that we pay something because they think they have something over us. So that ransom wasn't paid.
So those people that are paying, who are they writing the check to?
They'll write the check to the threat actors. It's usually an organization in another country that goes by a name. The Royal Group is the threat actor or the group that was, in our case, demanding the ransom. They had an official name. They were called the Royal Group. There are others that are threat actors that are part of these groups.
Who this is and
they'll demand that you send it by such and such a date, or again, they're gonna go in and they're gonna bust into all your systems, and they're gonna not only get your data, because they claim they have access to it, but they're gonna destroy your programming, your instructions, and your hardware. So you look at those and you say to yourself, how much data do they really have? And in our case, we went and did the forensics and we thought, yeah, well, call the bluff or pay. And we called the bluff. We weren't gonna pay. The university didn't want to pay and didn't. And it was the right move.
and did they then?
They did nothing. They did nothing.
They don't have to.
But they threatened and they wanted something. There was no ransom given. They did nothing. It was a bluff. Not that they couldn't still do something, because the claim is still open, but there were, I think, 20,000 notifications that needed to go out to offer credit monitoring and identity theft protection assistance, and so it was all handled very, very well. But there was no ransom paid. Ended up being a little bit smaller than we thought. And the portal of access to MSU Bozeman was through the College of Great Falls the Great Falls College.
Yeah.
Member Brown, I think. I want to get the name right because they've all changed, but MSU Great Falls College. So that's the portal of entry for this particular incident was there. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just,
I don't know what you would all think, but if you ever had one of these,
Mind-blowing, isn't it?
yeah, I understand, I've heard the situations occurring with other school districts, and I'm just trying to comprehend the idea of who are you writing the check to? Who are you actually paying? And if you are actually writing that check, it seems like it would be pretty easy to find the individual that you're
Bitcoin.
writing the
Yeah,
check
they
to.
use
It's
crypto.
Bitcoin usually, so
Yeah.
you can't trace it.
That's exactly how it came to me, is
So
that they wanted it in
it
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And addressed that way, so it can't be traced or tracked, and then, they get it, and, they run away to cyber ransom another day. Which is what they do, it's the same. It was- But they're pretty clever at how they do that, and they've got a lot of time on their hands. And they've got some pretty intelligent people that are willing to do anything to get that money, so.
Keep in mind, for a lot of these companies, they're trying to assess, the cost of paying them off, which is a horrible solution. But on the other hand, with a school, if their information actually is breached, now they've got potential lawsuits from all kinds of people because they disseminated information and didn't protect. So it's a no-win scenario.
Yeah.
Absolutely no win.
And if we were told by the board, and/or I suspect that would rise to the level of the governor or whoever, we do have ransomware coverage in our policy. Do you want to exercise that and toll that coverage? I don't think so. I mean, I think the legislature at one point in time looked at a bill, I don't think it ever got through or passed, that prevented the payment of ransom on claims, on lawsuits and whatnot. That, as I recall, that was defeated, that didn't go through. That doesn't set well here with Montans, paying ransoms. And, so that's, my one experience is I became aware that there was that legislation, but it didn't go anywhere. But that ransom thing didn't go anywhere either, so. Just know that it's a big deal. It's becoming an increasingly high percentage of the types of claims, and it's out there. Next slide, please. This is the rate of ransomware attacks by industry. And if you look, you'll see, so this is just kind of the rate of who they're targeting. It gives you an idea of who they're targeting and what the mean recovery is by organizational revenue. And who do we see at the very top?
Education.
Education. Higher to lower education. You all mentioned some of these school districts. I mean, resources may be one of the issues that are targeted because maybe they're not as sophisticated in terms of cyber.
I don't like being called lower education. Just as a side note.
I should have had that taken out of the slide.
Well, so does that lower education number build in the fact that if I'm in a school district and I got a room full of kids on computers, that's probably why?
I think that's probably why, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can see where that would, I don't know for sure, but
Yeah, you're
that
right.
stands to reason.
Because adults in the room not necessarily see eye candy and click, but if a kid does, they're a kid.
That,
You
kids.
expect that.
Would you prefer elementary?
Yeah.
K-12,
K-12, there you go.
that's
Yeah.
my preferred term.
Lower. I've never heard lower education, that's interesting.
They're up there though. Higher education leads the pack. At the bottom end is technology at 50% on the far right. And that's also stands to reason, doesn't it? If they're in technology, you're gonna a little bit more, be a little bit better educated about the risk and being a little more resilient and oriented toward mitigation. But look at local, state and local government. They're kind of at the higher end, aren't they? At 69%, the rate of ransomware attacks by industry. And it's because of all the data, the large amounts of data. I think a lot of cyber threat actors know that we're sophisticated, but there's a lot of data and a lot of ways of kind of sneaking in and looking at the ends.
Just to clarify, when it says 80% on lower education, does that mean 80% of all lower education systems in the United States have had some kind of an attack that they've had to pay off?
You know, I lifted this from a market presentation from our consultants at Alliant, and so it was a national survey, I know. I'm not exactly who or responded. It's actually, they did this in conjunction with SOFO's State of Ransomware.
So it says rate of ransomware attacks.
Correct.
I would
Does
say
that
it
mean
says
in-
that it's been attacked. I don't think that 80% number means that someone got in or someone got paid.
Right, could it
I just
mean
think it's just like a,
incidents?
have you been attacked? Yes.
That's the
Have you
term
been
you
attacked?
used
No.
previously.
Correct.
Attempts to get in.
Attempts.
and get
And it's probably more like
Remember, younger
100.
hit that
Yeah.
correctly.
Right, yeah.
Like, we've all,
Sure.
Kind
every
of like,
single one of my
kind
staff
of like the
members.
chair was saying, once you click on it, that might be one of those times and it
Dang
goes
it.
no place.
Yep.
Other than 35 minutes of
Yes.
training.
Retraining. I had to
And
do
my
it.
tech director being very upset.
Yeah,
And then the mean revenue recovery by revenue source, larger organizations pay more. You know, it's pretty much 5 billion and more. The average ransomware payment for recovery was almost 5 million, 4.5 million, as opposed to a smaller organization with 10 million in revenue, where the average payment was 165,000. So it's just to give you an idea of the mean recovery by revenue size by organization. So hopefully this kind of lays the backdrop and gives you a foundation for and a knowledge of where the attacks are happening and where they're focused on ransomware. So that gets us into what's at stake and what we're talking about with respect to your role as a board and our, Sean's staff's role as state employees, the employees for TRS. So the time is certainly a consideration. I don't know that I can even begin to touch upon how much time it takes on the incident response from day-to-day operations. The people, if Sean's staff is involved or the board is involved, and you're looking at data and you're working with privacy counsel and vendors on the notification law, it does take time away from what you do. Depending on the magnitude of the incident, you know, some are gonna take longer than others. I remember when we had the Department of Public Health incident in 2013 where the Chinese hacker got into their 27 systems and we were doing the forensics. There were meetings every day. And these were high-level staff, from the CIO to the directors, to legal counsel from the agencies, to the privacy counsel for the insurance company. So it took a lot of time, a lot of resources. And it's not a pleasant experience. I mean, it's just, we all want to do the right thing. We want to protect the people we serve. And so we want to do it in such a way that the legislature knows, that it's transparent, that there are no secrets, and that the people know they're going to be protected, that we're going to put some stuff in place to give them some options to go out there and get some services that will help them protect themselves. So, money, was there a question?
I just wanted to make a point about this last slide. You were pointing out how much bigger the payouts were for large companies, but I just did a little math, and actually the percentage on the lower companies is far higher.
Yes.
Like 20 times as high on a $10 million company
As a
for
percentage
the
of revenue.
payouts as a percentage,
Yeah.
as opposed to the big companies.
That's a good point to make, yeah. I suspect that the absolute amount in terms of the payout, I think that probably some large organizations, you know, that they have 5 billion or more a year, that's not that big of a deal to write a check. I'm not saying that that would be the case, but I mean, 4.5, I mean, for some people, they would look at that maybe and say, gosh, if this happens, they could corrupt our systems and do all these terrible things. And so I don't know why there would be an average or mean recovery of 4.5 million, but apparently some organizations decide to pay the ransoms. And so that's the mean recovery for those organizations.
Which just encourages them to do it again at a higher
Exactly.
I was
price.
gonna say, there's no guarantee they won't do it again.
Right?
Well, they guarantee they will.
Right.
Yeah, they'll come back and they'll want more. Glad that we don't, or never have to this point. I can't see us ever doing that. Then on the next slide, back to what's at stake money. It can mean legal fees, forensic investigation expenses, notification, call centers, credit monitoring, litigation. All these have been part of the footprint when we have these incidents. Regulatory fines, corrective action and penalties. And then I think probably as important as the preceding two, when it comes to reputation, is trust. I mean, what does that do if there's a breach of a retirement system, or not even to pick on you, pick on anybody? What does it do in terms of our clients' perception of trust if their data if it isn't safe? That's huge. So I'm glad that you're all doing well, and we have good IT and information security protocol in place. So what are the costs? We hit upon them in the prior slide, that credit monitoring, through the insurance that we offer, we'll talk about that later. If there is in fact a need to a breach, an unauthorized disclosure, or a determination that to do the right thing out of precaution, we need to go out and notify people, then they usually set up credit monitoring. If you haven't received those letters, I've got one or two in my lifetime, but you'll get a letter and they'll say, you know, your data may have been accessed. You have the choice of going out and taking advantage of Experian credit fee monitoring. And then they have a call center you can call to be able to talk with a person live and ask about what happened and ask if you're at risk, and be assured that they're gonna, you know, do the right thing So those are expensive to set up the call centers and do the credit monitoring. Damages in situations where maybe their data was exfiltrated and/or money was taken from bank accounts or other places, then there's a loss of money. And that's part of the amount associated with a lawsuit or claim. Defense costs and settlement expenses, hiring attorneys. We've involved attorneys in almost every breach. The privacy counsel from our insurance carrier is involved. They're expert and they're out of New York. So it does get a little bit expensive, but their fees are pretty reasonable. They get in and they come right to the chase. They get right to the heart of the matter, and they don't spend a lot of unnecessary time on litigation. So we've been fortunate to work with some really good law firms. Baker Hostetler is the one that comes to mind as being the primary law firm we've worked with out of New York. And they specialize almost entirely in information security litigation. They handle the Home Depot breach and many other big ones. So you want to know that you have someone on your team that's been there and done that. Forensics, lost revenue streams. You have a cyber attack, this was the case at one of our campuses, then things were kind of shut down for a few days. And so there's a loss of revenue at the bookstore, cafeteria, revenue generating operations. So the insurance covers what they call business interruption. So lost revenue streams. Legal fees, mail notification, sending the letters out. We can't send out 1 million letters in 48 days. If it's private health information, the statutes and federal laws give us 60 days. So in that public health incident, they were actually sent out within 48 days to 1.3 million people. They have contracts with vendors that specialize in mass mailings, and they have to check through deceased registries to make sure that they've done due diligence to check and make sure those letters are getting to everybody, including family members, if available, of people who are deceased, and that information was accessed. So they're very thorough in how they approach that. Public relations, that's not often taken advantage of, but how to explain it, how to message it, and how to communicate it, very important. The ransoms we talked about, remediation, fixing the problem, and then finally the regulatory fines and penalties. So those are the costs. And some examples, any questions on those? Maybe you think of a few more I didn't include. But I think that's kind of the crux of where we see expenses. Some examples, I'll hit these quickly. I thought you might find these interesting. If I'm ever invited back again, I think you all as a board told me, as a staff, that it's interesting to see some of the examples because you'll learn from some of the examples. And maybe you remember the South Carolina Department of Revenue breach. That was when Nikki Haley was the governor back when that happened. And that was a big breach. That was, I think, that might have been 10 or 15 million names. It was a phishing attack resulting in the theft, actually 3.6 million social security numbers. It was a tax breach. And information on 387,000 credit and debit cards. I go to these conferences and I knew the people from the state of South Carolina who at that point did not have cyber insurance. But to cover the cost of that breach, they were the biggest fund. They were an insurance fund. So they covered the cost of that breach, and then the legislature reimbursed their fund for those expenses. And as I recall, or remember, that was, I think, in the $25 million range, or somewhere between 20 and 25 million on the cost of that South Carolina breach. It was expensive. Secondly, the Utah Department of Technology Services, that was a brute force attack because of a weak password, and resulted into hackers getting into a system and passwords and into financial data and obtaining information on 780,000 Utah residents. And it was related to sensitive healthcare information. So the state of Utah had to be, that was a pretty big one too.
Who comes up with a weak password?
You'd be
1, 2,
surprised.
3, 4, 5.
Yeah. So brute force attack, was that actually like a physical break-in?
Went in.
Not a physical break-in, but a brute force in terms of how it was approached with massive cyber software and information and threat software to get into the system. That's an excellent question, because when you think of brute, I'm thinking,
Yeah, I'm thinking of
the
physical
physical side.
break-in, taking computers and.
Yeah, but it's actually just the cyber, the software instructions, the way it was hacked, was what they call it, a brute force attack. And then the last one is, I've talked a little bit about DPHHS, the 1.3 million, I won't go into that anymore. And share some more again, made in Montana. I think I might have mentioned this, but one of our agencies had a contract with a vendor, and the vendor closed, left the computers in the old offices, they were stolen, only 5 or 6. And so it was a small incident, but those 7 individuals or 8 individuals that were involved were offered the credit monitoring and offered the call center assistance. So it just goes to show that small things can turn into big things. This didn't. But, with your vendors, make sure they have insurance or that they're cyber aware, because if they don't have it, it comes back to us. If there's an unauthorized disclosure from one of your vendors, that often lands back on our lap. So, the second bullet here on this page is interesting in that we once had an agency who was out doing training, and they distributed a packet like what TRS distributed to you today as a board. Innocently enough, the packet, but one of the examples in the packet using a name in the training had an individual with an actual, as I recall, a social security number. But it was one individual, so the one individual needed to be notified. So be careful what you put in your training packet.
Yeah.
It was an innocent enough mistake, but it was compounded by the fact that the then director wanted to call everybody and apologize. And what we said is, just get us involved and we'll take care of treating them right. But an apology may or may not have been necessary, so we don't go out admitting liability and, throwing our souls under the bus until we know, in fact, if there was an unauthorized disclosure. And that usually requires a forensics or a legal determination. So that's kind of how we are. We're good people and good at heart, and we want to do the right thing. And so just be careful what you say and turn it over to us, and our people will deal with it. Unencrypted content on a website, bullet number 3. The website contained names and social security numbers of workers' compensation beneficiaries. So they had a list of all the workers' compensation claims for this entity over the past 3 years. So it had their names that they had been injured, and it had their social security numbers. So we were able to step around that without a claim, but we found out about it. We quickly had that particular entity remove that from their website, to take that down so it wasn't on display. And it didn't really go anywhere or result in a notification requirement, because it's only been out there a day or two, but someone reported that to us, and that might not be something that this particular agency, university needs to have out there. And then the last one I like to share because it shows that we can fall into these schemes quite innocently enough, but a hacker posing as a Microsoft official, have you ever had those messages where your computer's a little slow, we can help you? I used to get more of those. I think the software keeps a lot of that out now, but a hacker posing as a Microsoft expert called someone and said, we can make your computer quicker, we notice it's really slow. And they said, sure, thank you for your help. And so they gave information to the phone caller, and they gave enough information that the phone caller got in and installed what we call man-in-the-browser malware on the desktop, which tracks passwords. And the attempt would be to try to find out what the financial passwords were. This person worked in payroll, as I recall, or financial services, to get into the system. And so the employee, after giving that information, quickly thought,
That's not right.
had that gut feeling, I shouldn't have done that. And they called their IT people right away and they shut that down within about 10 minutes. But, it can happen. It can happen to any of us because those schemes are pretty clever. So just some examples for us to be aware of, small and large. And then leads us into the insurance coverage that we have, a very broad policy for you all. We use Beazley, they're a Lloyd's of London insurance carrier, and they cover the first 2 million. Then we layer 5 million above that with other Lloyd's of London carriers. And you may be, so if you're thinking 7 million isn't that much, well, our largest breach or incident to date was in the range of about 2.5. So, we have a little over 1 million people that live here. We're not like Georgia that buy 100 million in cyber liability insurance. We don't have as many people. We don't have as many records that we're custodians of. So we're pretty consistent with other states around us like North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho. In fact, we have a little more than some of them with 7. I'd like to get another 3, but it's proven to be a little tough to get higher limits in the market that we're looking at right now. But it has a $7 million program limit. It's through Lloyd's of London. There are smaller sublimits for mail notification, ransomware, electronic funds, transfer, and those sublimits are typically in the range of 2 million. And if you're asking, well, what if we have a mail notification, a big incident, we have to notify all these people and it's over the 2 million sublimit? What I can tell you is in the past, the governor's looked at us and said, you guys pay. It's over the limit, insurance doesn't cover. They're not set up to pay claims, so I'm not saying that's what we'll do in the future, but that's what we've been asked to do. And we're on your side and we're here to help. You don't have a huge operating budget, I don't think, outside of, a lot of it's invested in the funds that you invest. So I don't know that you have an extra 5 million sitting around anywhere, Sean, that you can devote to covered cyber losses. Like, yeah, you do, because you're like most agencies.
He's giving it in pay increases.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I did want to tell you lastly that the agency or university, your copay is 10%, and our deductible is 25%. That may seem steep, but what it means is you pay the first, your copay is you pay 25,000. We want the agencies and universities, there's some skin in the game. It's a deterrent, it's for you guys to really know, we can't absorb it all. Be a little more careful next time. Do the cyber protocol thing. And that's higher than any other program with any other deductible we have, except property, and our deductible there is 2 million. But that's the copay, it's 25% or 10%. We lowered that from 25% a few years ago to 10, so it's more affordable, and you have less skin in the game and less out of your pocket, because you don't have unlimited funds to pay those kind of things. That's kind of how the security insurance works. The state of the market, just quickly hit upon that. And tell me, Sean, if I need to finish a little early, but I think I'm on track to finish it.
No, you're fine.
You need me to wrap up early for breaks or whatever questions the members may have. But the marketplace, on a positive note, for the last 2 years, has stabilized. The trends were up. Our cyber insurance went up because of ransomware primarily. But the last 2 years, the premiums have been stable. And they're stable for us because of what we say at the very top. The softening marketplace for insureds that have gone through the necessary changes with respect to cybersecurity controls. So the underwriters and our insurance agents are convinced or believe that we're doing more or better than many, and so our rates are more favorable. So we always say congratulations, thank you, clients. So we're not paying more.
On that point, back on the previous page, our copay is 10% of the first 250,000.
That's correct.
On each claim.
We pay everything above that to 250, and then the commercial insurance pays.
So theoretically, we could have 10 claims in a year that were all under 25,000 and the insurance wouldn't cover anything. We'd pay every dime. So what I'm wondering is, of the total claims for agencies of this size, what percentage is actually covered by that 25% deductible? Do you know?
Well, let me back up just a little bit. It's an excellent question. So we've only had 49 cyber incidents in the last 15 years. You're unlikely to have more than one in a year.
Okay.
The law of numbers is against that, but each incident will be treated separately as a separate occurrence.
Right.
If you had one in January, you have another one in March that's totally different. And
another $25,000.
Then $25,000 for each separate occurrence. I've never seen that happen to any agency where they had multiple occurrences in a year. Could it happen? I guess, but it's unlikely. And again, if it prevents the financial hardship or we need to work with the board or the governor, then they'll tell us what they want us to do. If that becomes.
Do you have any idea what the average claim is for agencies of our size? Is it 100,000 or 50,000?
We've had so few, I can't even say it's 100. I think it's a lot smaller than that.
Okay.
The big ones, in the range of 1 to 2 million, and it comes to mind, it's a ransomware claim. The DPHHS hacking event in 2013, that was south of $1.5 million. Those two come to mind. But
so if the average claim is,
beyond
let's just
those,
say 50,000, then the deductible would actually cover 50% of those expenses. So really the coverage we're getting is essentially for large claims, unmanageable.
Well, if you had a $50,000 incident,
right?
If the incident was, you'd only pay 10% of that. So it would be 5.
Okay.
It's not like a deductible, it's copay.
Okay.
So if it's 5,000, you pay 500.
Okay, that's a good point.
10%. And then we don't have an aggregate, what they call a stop loss for multiple occurrences, where you only pay 25 in a year. If you have multiple occurrences, you pay 25 each.
Okay.
But you'll only pay 10% of each
claim.
So you're not going to be out 25,000 each time is a deductible.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's better.
That's a fair question, very good question. So going just through the list here quickly, more competitive rates of capacity offered by the carriers. That's what a softer, stable market means. Insureds who have strengthened their resiliency, which we have, are benefiting. Bullet number 2. Number 3, the cyber insurance carriers have more of an appetite for the risk. Ransomware claims have stabilized, if not declined. I think it's because people are getting wise to the controls, security controls that need to be put in place, and maybe fewer of them are paying ransoms. I can't say for sure. But ransomware is stable. That was driving the cost of cyber insurance. And that's now in a much better stable state than it was 2 years ago. But there are out there, we mentioned earlier, the war in Ukraine, rising tensions in the Middle East, ever-changing state and national regulatory matters, and a growing marketplace that put pressure for those to someday increase. I think for now we're good. I mean, again, you have a premium holiday. You don't charge anything this year. And for the next biennium, the rates are set. And you're not affected by the increase in insurance. We absorb that. It's built into our liability rate. So you don't see that. You don't see a line item for cyber. You get hit with a line item for general liability, and the cyber is built into that assessment. And it's half of what it was 2 years ago for the 26-27 biennium, if approved by the legislature. So I'll move on to the next one, incident response, which is an important part of the crux of why I'm here today. And just as a reminder, we've kind of hit upon a few of these. Bullet 1, upon the discovery of the potential release of information, notify your internal stakeholders. You're going to work with Sean, you're going to work with your IT people, your legal counsel, and the board. I'm quite certain you notify you, and you'd all know. But I don't think that means we need to go out and tell everybody until we know what really happened. You'll fill out a first report of incident. Bullet number 2, occurs during normal business hours, you'll call our staff, or after hours, you'll be transferred to a live person. Their phones ring to their cell phones. And we remind you not to call us, it's a true emergency. Most things can be dealt with the next business day. Bullet 3, complete our report of incidents found on our website. Make sure it's signed and sent to us and vetted appropriately here through whoever Sean and the board determines it needs to be vetted through. Don't contact individuals who have been affected by it. Don't call them and apologize, or we don't know that we need to apologize. If we, the apology comes in doing right by them in terms of offering the credit monitoring and breach assistance. But let us work with the notification part. And we've said this, sometimes it still happens. Be careful about contacting law enforcement. We love law enforcement. We have great relationships with them. What has happened in a few states? So let us know first, and we'll work with our people, the Privacy Council from the carriers and others, to make sure that the right people are in the know. What's happened in a few other states is the first thing they did was call the FBI. And that's important. I'm all for law enforcement. I support all that. But then what they'll do is they'll come in and confiscate the computers. Then you can't get at the data. You can't find out what happened. And by the time you get them back a year or two later, then the opportunity to provide call center assistance, to offer credit monitoring, to notify people has come and passed, and it's more of a criminal investigation than they do. Fortunately, in Hell, I know that our CIO and our people do have contacts with the FBI that they work with, but they haven't kind of done that. But just, we'll work with them. And thank you for working with us. We appreciate that.
Don't call the local newspaper.
That's correct. That's correct. Actually, I think the statute requires, well, I'm not sure. There is a notification of the press if it's over a certain number of claims. So they often find out about it. And virtually every cyber incident we've ever had that was above 500 or 1,000, they know when it gets in the papers. And then there's usually a statement by the president of a university or an agency or, someone. But yeah, that wouldn't be the first thing you'd want to do. Member Brown, that's right. And written correspondence, again, emphasize it enough, refer to it as an incident, not a breach. It's not a breach until that legal determination has been made. Step 2, then report it to us and we'll escalate it to the cyber insurance carrier, who will appoint privacy counsel. Sometimes they appoint claims people who aren't attorneys to work on the claim, and if the attorneys need to get involved, then they're involved. And the notification must be made without reasonable delay, second bullet, to restore the reasonable integrity of the data system. That's by code 216.1503B. So no delays, jump on that, do it timely. And then the third point's just that question. You're not equipped, Sean, I know, to notify 5,000 people or 10,000 if there's an incident or a breach. That's what our carriers do. And those services listed below are part of what comes with the insurance. And hopefully you never have to have the experience of testing those services. It's wonderful to work with them, but if you're out of the spotlight, I'm sure you're all happy.
Yes.
And not having to deal with that. We are too. We don't get
We
any.
could do that, but we wouldn't want to.
To do that, yeah.
We
And it doesn't offend us in any way, shape, or form.
20,000 letters in a
One
month
maybe, yeah.
regularly, but we wouldn't want to be crafting that language and doing all that, certainly, so,
We're glad you stay away from that. We have not had cyber incidents for quite some time now.
yeah.
So we're kind of on a positive,
Yeah.
positive, Cyber Mondays could come and gone, so I feel a little bit better now. But, anyway, I think we're doing okay with the cyber insurance. I hope that gives you an idea and an overview of how all this pieces together and then what to do if you ever have an incident.
So is under step one then, isn't there a statutory requirement to notify the Attorney General's office? Do you guys take care of
Chief
that?
Information Officer,
You
and then
know?
usually the carrier and their privacy counsel often notify the AG too. So we kind of take it to them first, and because they know the laws, they're pretty keen on making sure the AG knows, and the agencies usually let the CIO know. You're gonna let Kevin Gilbertson know.
Right.
He seems to find out from the agencies, and so he's involved.
Okay.
But that's correct. I think that covers the basis. The last two slides that are after the questions and answers, they're just examples of large breaches. And I really don't have a handle on those. I didn't have time to research them and talk about it. I think I've given you enough made in Montana examples to give you an idea. But if you want to look them up and go out and check them out, they were the notable breaches in '24 and moving forward. So great to meet everybody. Some great questions.
So the proposals.
Do you guys do outreach to, if someone calls you and says, can you talk to a group? Do you guys do those kind of things?
We do. We've come here, I think, 2 or 3 years running. We've done
I think this is your third time. We do it about every other year.
every other year.
Yeah. Usually have a few new board members. They all go to national conferences and come back scared, so, yeah.
And understandably so. This is scary stuff. So, yeah, we come here. We've done it in higher education with all the CIOs in the commissioner's office. So, yeah, we occasionally get invited to come out and talk about this and do outreach. And we're not averse to doing that. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. I think it makes us all more informed and helps us all be on the same page if something does happen.
Talk to us a little bit about, you said there were about 900 incidents a year.
That's all of our claims. That includes all claims, and so that's, I'm trying to remember, I'm probably explain that for, we get about 900 claims a year. That was my introduction at the beginning in terms of what we do with claims. So those claims are everything from broken windshields to, property losses, to floods, wind and hail. The microburst of Missoula you read about a couple of 2 months ago, but that's all claims. We get maybe 1 or 2 cyber instances. That's just the cyber's 1 or 2, not 900.
All right.
Thank you for asking.
Because
clarifying.
You said 5 staff members and 4 attorneys. Are the 4 attorneys full-time or are they contract?
They're in-house and they're full-time.
Well,
Yeah, and we keep them pretty busy, and they work with the Attorney General's office, and/or if there's a level of expertise needed, they'll hire private counsel. So, but 900 is everything, 1 or 2 cyber incidents, and some years we don't get any.
Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you. Nice to
great
meet
job,
you.
thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
And your knowledge.
Appreciate it.
Yes. So we have a break scheduled for right now. Does everybody want to just do that? And then let's come back at 10 o'clock. All right. So we are on to administrative business. The first item is the investment report.
That's me.
Yes.
We did meet recently, Board of Investments. Sean actually came and did a wonderful job running through the actuarial evaluation and kind of explaining where we were at, so that was fun to have him there. We didn't, there was a lot of administrative stuff, and then just a sort of cursory, shorter investment review this time. It was a shorter meeting. But we did talk a lot about interest rates coming down. The STIP return is trending down. So we need to keep that in mind, especially when we set the payout that we give to folks when they pull their funds early, which is not unexpected. Rates are coming down because inflation is down, so that's at least stabilizing now. It's come down significantly from the highs. We were pushing 9–10%, and now we're down just above what the target is. We're close to 2.5% inflation now. Interestingly, everybody was hoping, I think, and somewhat expecting, as the Fed reduced rates, that it would reduce rates across the entire yield curve, and it absolutely has not. It's reduced the short end of the yield curve. The mortgage rates have actually come up since the Fed started lowering rates. But the good news is the yield curve is starting to look like a normal yield curve. Right now it's very flat. If they go down another quarter, half, whatever, I think we're gonna have a yield curve that's shaped the way it's supposed to be. We haven't had that in a couple of years, so.
10-year's still slightly ahead of the 30-year, I think, but
Yeah.
other than that, it's looking
We're
normal.
getting close, finally. We are within policy limits on everything. All of the allocations are very, very near their midpoint, if not right on. Markets have been great. The first part of the year, and I guess starting last year, we saw markets doing really well because inflation was coming down and because of the idea that the Fed would reduce rates, which is beneficial to economic growth. And then we've had a nice bump since the election. And I think the general consensus around that is deregulation and more stable or potentially lower tax rates helps businesses. So there's some optimism there. The flip side of that is we don't know about some of the more controversial ideas with higher tariffs and mass deportations and things that might be inflationary. So it's kind of a mixed bag, and it's kind of a wait and see. The other thing that's really been interesting is artificial intelligence and how that's pushing the tech sector and large cap growth. And it could be, and this is absolutely an opinion, but it could be that maybe we're a little bit ahead of ourselves on how quickly AI will be implemented throughout the economy and how much productivity gains we'll see. So a lot of those companies are looking pretty expensive. The funds are, we don't specifically say, hey, we're gonna back off on growth a little bit because it's expensive, but we're very diversified. And so we're not really concerned about that at this point. But some concerns that maybe some of those companies are a little bit overvalued and that things will take a little bit longer. And we certainly have investments in more value-oriented things that probably have a tailwind under this administration. So we feel like we're sitting in a pretty good spot. Returns have been great, really great. And way above our hurdle so far, so.
It's terribly difficult to predict how fast AI will continue to change all the different aspects of our economy. I was just watching a program the other day. There was a church in France somewhere that created an AI Jesus. So you can go into the confession booth and talk to Jesus on AI.
They get your advice.
That's about creepy as I can think of.
That's not creepy, that's ridiculous.
It's in the confessional.
Yeah.
That's what it is, yeah.
I did not see that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I'd be worried about what it's gonna confess to someone else when I'm done.
Yeah, right.
Using your voice.
Exactly.
Oh, what they do is they assess your personality and what it is you like, and then Jesus appears exactly as you would like him to appear.
Oh, jeez.
So it might look like Mike Ditka.
Dub bears.
Dub bears.
Wow.
Says a lot, doesn't it?
Okay,
Thank you for your report.
yes.
We also have our Nolan here, financial statements and budget.
Yeah, this will be short and very sweet because the numbers are very good, so kind of building off of what Member Trost just spoke about. These numbers are as of October 31st. But I just looked this morning, and since October 31st, it looked like just in that 1 month and 1 week-ish, looks like the S&P is up about 6.5, Dow's up 6.5, and the NASDAQ is like 8.8 or something. So these numbers would look a lot better if they were as of November 30th. But so as of October 31st, you know, we still, compared to last year on the balance sheet, you know, the cap is up about 450 million, or sorry, 540 million. And that current asset stuff, that's just timing there, where last year we were at, we sell STIP kind of right at the end of the month to make our payroll payments, and sometimes it doesn't reflect until the first of the month instead of on the last day of the month, so. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the theme throughout. I mean, that 540 million carries all the way down to, you know, the total assets there is up significantly from this point last year. Nothing else really jumps out at you. If you have any questions, let me know. You can see there kind of the year-to-date income, which will be show on the next page. But last year, you know, we're at a negative, you know, 180 million, where as of, you know, October 31st, we're at about 140 million in the black. So so if anybody has any questions, the balance sheet's showing, you know, same thing. Most of this is coming from investment revenue, and most of that's probably coming from the appreciation of our assets rather than, you know, selling things off, so.
No, and I have one question. Under total expenses, I see it went up by about 5 million last year, which is a little over 3%. Historically, does that seem about an average rate of increase in expense, total expense?
Yeah, I mean, that's mostly driven by our benefit payments.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, you can see that's on the, I guess it'd be your next page there. The benefit payments there, benefits paid was 146 million as of October 31st last year, and then this year it's at 150. So I mean, you know, about 4.5 or 4.7 million of that increase is all just benefit payments. And then we do have more withdrawals from the system this year as of October 31st than last year. So I mean, that the rest of it is pretty much that amount, because our admin expenses are actually you know, down slightly, and there's really no other difference if you can look at the numbers there. So.
Our 10 and 15-year average on benefit payments is right at 3 or just barely under 3, so 2.8% to 3%.
So am I missing something by assuming that if our total rate of return on our investment portfolio is, we're estimating it over 7% per year going forward, and our benefit payments are only going up between 3 and 4, then our overall amortization schedule should continue to come down the time required for full amortization?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the actuaries project, you know, that it will be fully, the liability will be fully amortized in 21 years.
21 years now.
If all assumptions are met, of course, which they won't be, but.
Yeah, my grandmother used to say the biggest word in the English language is if, and the
Yeah.
second biggest is if only.
But I mean, these are, you know, everything looks really good. If you have any, you know, other questions, let us know. But yeah, you will certainly see our expenses go up, and the driver of that is always gonna be the benefit payments, you know, increase every year. On the following page, you can see this is where we have our short-term investment pool, revenue, and then also our securities gains revenue, which is those both were pretty similar to last year. Actually, STIP is still returning pretty, good amount for us. And then the obvious biggest driver is the investment appreciation, at about 200 million, in comparison to negative 120 million at this point last year. And if you remember, we had a really strong, finish to the year last year, so we did end up with a positive return, but as of October 31st of 2023, we were not looking as good. And then the following, that administrative expenses are, we're actually down, as of this point, this year in comparison to last year, but the biggest driver of that is our amortization. The M-Trust projects are fully amortized. So we'll have no amortization expense, whereas last year we had 137,000 in that expense category. So that's kind of the biggest difference between last year and this year when it comes to our admin expenses. The following page, unless there's any other questions on the financials, the budget as of October 31st, we're anticipating, we had some small vacancy savings. We've actually been pretty fully staffed. So, we have a small surplus there projected, of 22,000-ish, and then our operating expense, another 80 or 90,000, so, around 110,000 surplus is projected at this point, pending any large expenditures that we did not budget for, so. The following page, information, contracted services are our biggest budget category, and we're about 33% through the fiscal year, and we've spent roughly 27%. I don't usually include the audit fees because we get, but yeah, around 27% of that. So because we actually haven't, as of October 31st, hadn't spent anything for audit fees yet. So, but they will be coming. The auditors are here, so. And then there's really no vacant agencies or delinquent agencies as of this point. I mean, this was prepared on the 5th of November, and at that point Carbon County was, but they've since submitted all those reports, and they have like one working retiree that works for them, so I mean, it wasn't a large contribution amount anyways. Aside from that, the financial report is to the auditor, so, and, we expect the opinion here very soon, in December, hopefully the 10th or right around there, so, and haven't heard anything that, we anticipate a clean audit, so.
Great.
Thank you, Nolan.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Dee, thank you for going to the NCTR.
National conferences are always a good time to see people you've met at previous conferences and learn some new things. I left my notes on my dining room table, so you're probably glad for that. But they always have such good speakers, and I have to say, one of my favorite parts of the national conference is the Teacher of the Year. Like so many classroom teachers, just really super special lady. She comes out of Eastern Tennessee. Her name is Missy Testerman. She's had 30 years in the classroom, unlike many previous Teachers of the Year. So she came to speak to us with a head of gray hair, which I felt very comfortable with. But she has nurtured students in her elementary school. She's the ESL teacher, has taken on the immigrant population in her area, and has done just a super job. And she shared some things with us that I never knew. But how many of you have ever been to Tennessee? So most of you have. Well, I've been saying it wrong. She said, I am from, what does a teacher always get on their desk first day of school? Everybody says Apple. She says, well, she said, and if I throw it at you, I'm from Appalachia. And I thought, that's a great way of remembering it. But she also told about some of her students. I mean, she's educated doctors and all kinds of really cool kids, young people now. But she said, she told them that she was going to Washington DC to be honored as one of the 4 or 5 finalists. And one of the kids said, well, are you coming back to school? And she went, well, I am. And one of her bright little boys says, well, yes, she's coming back to school. She's not old enough to retire. According to Tennessee law, she has to have so many years of blah, blah, blah. So when she said she was going to DC, one of them raised her hand and said, please, would you not say anything stupid? Out of the mouth of babes. But it was another great conference. I encourage you to go. I also had a Zoom conference this week from NCTR talking about the shift in DC and what's going to happen. I think there, a lot of us don't know because our incoming president says things that we kind of scratch our head at, and then other things that make sense. So we'll see when it gets there. But the nice thing about it is most of the chairs and vice chairs maybe have switched position, but nothing's going to be in upheaval. The Ways and Means Committee, which has the retirement stuff, is going to be chaired by the same person, which is good news for us. They also talked about the people in DC being of the non-Rothification generation. And so I think they're looking at public employees' retirement as a benefit, not something we need to go in and throw in the toilet, if you will. But it'll be something that our national group will be paying very, very close attention to, and I know Sean will too, and the staff. But I'm hoping that once everybody gets in place back there, things kind of settle down, and we run like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
But we'll keep you informed.
Yeah, thank you for going.
Yeah.
And it was in Atlanta this year?
It was in Atlanta. Yeah, I won't make the mistake of trying to fly the same day. My son was coming home to be with his dad while I was at the conference. So I tried to plan as least amount of days, and there was highway construction. So my legislative committee, I got in on the last 45 minutes of the 2-hour session. I was like, oh, I won't make that mistake again. But Lee did pick me up to speed.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Well, thank you again. The next thing on our business is tentative meeting dates. And what we have scheduled right now is February 21st. May 9th is underlined, so I'm assuming.
It is, so the reason that we need to try to firm up that May date if we can now, so I can have because we'll have Kavanaugh, McDonald, and Milliman actuaries will be here, because Milliman will be presenting the results of our actuarial audit, and then Kavanaugh, McDonald will be here to respond to that. So those guys will need to know when to travel and what to schedule.
9th is great for me.
So I will not be able to attend the February 21st.
Okay.
I won't either.
I have district basketball in Shelby that day.
Okay. So the one thing I have through the middle of February, the first week of February is Friday, Saturday seedings, and then the middle of February is Thursday, Friday, Saturday state wrestling tournament, so.
And I have robotics possibly the 7th and 8th. I'd have to do that remotely and then head for Bozeman or do it from Bozeman.
Is there
which
any
is
way
an
to do it
hotel.
early in the week rather than late in the
Yeah, I
week?
mean, that's an option, or go to the following week, in February, but there's no reason we can't go earlier in the week if it works for all of you.
For me in February, like, it's speech and drama the first weekend, it's wrestling the second, third weekend, it's basketball the fourth and fifth weekend, I'm
Better to do.
I'm
Investments is
not
2 days that following week too.
available late in the
Let's
week
try to do it
in
earlier.
February.
So does,
That 17th
Thursday,
is is President's Day, so it doesn't, like, what day works for you? Because for me, it doesn't.
I can make the 10th, the 17th, or the 24th work.
on
For me.
Mondays?
Tuesdays.
February,
Oh,
are we talking February?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
Okay.
February, you're right, so, but those are all Mondays, right? Is that-
Those are Mondays, but Tuesdays or Wednesdays work as well. I just, if I can travel on Sunday and
Monday's a
back.
holiday.
Yeah.
17th.
not a school holiday though.
I have a 3-week meeting.
Schools are still in
Well, that
session.
depends on your
It depends on your school.
calendar committee and.
Yeah,
And the
In
18th
Shelby,
and
we're in
19th,
school.
I'm not going to be around.
but I'm,
Do we wanna do the 24th?
Could do the 24th.
24th works for me.
I'm available 24th.
I could meet you by Zoom from Costa Rica,
Are you gone all month?
3 weeks.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
I could probably do it, but that gives me 3 full days of board
Oh,
meetings
cause
that week.
they're
Oh,
that week,
yeah.
right,
It's a lot.
That is a lot.
yeah.
You wanna look at the next month, or is that too late getting into
I'll be
March?
back by the 2nd of March. That's good.
You really wanna come back the second and go to a meeting on the third?
No, not really, but I would.
Any Monday.
It's actually the 7th of March would be the next Friday, but I don't know if you wanna push it out that far.
I
mean, maybe my boys don't make it, but that's boys divisional, so I'm still.
7th of
When we talk
March, oh,
about
yeah.
events at schools, the beginning of February to the middle of March, every Thursday, Friday,
Yeah,
I'm likely somewhere.
Yeah.
Whether we're running a tournament in Shelby or whether I'm supporting our kids at some other location along the High Line.
that's great. They're lucky kids.
Well, how about the 24th then? Does that work?
No, that was the
Wow.
week he's got 3 meetings then,
Oh,
because of Board of Investments.
17th, we don't like it because it's President's Day.
We do have that day off,
Okay.
and I do not want to come here. If I have the day off, sorry.
10th?
18th,
Well,
19th.
but how about the 18th or 19th, would either of those work?
So
I
18th.
have doctor's appointments 18th and 19th.
Okay.
The 20th.
10th? The 4th, the 5th, the
Yeah,
10th, the 11th, the
10th,
12th,
yeah.
17th, 18th, 19th,
How about the
24th, 25th,
How about the
26th.
7th?
The-
March.
Yeah, no, February.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able, I can't be
That's
here for that.
wrestling.
But I'm, like, the 10th, 11th, 12th, of February would work, we could move it up.
Let's do the 10th. Does that work?
That works.
So hard.
Didn't somebody say something about the 10th? I mean, I'm good with
No,
it.
10th,
Yeah,
I think the
You're
10th
in Costa
okay.
Rica?
I'm in
Monday
Costa
the
Rica.
10th?
Yeah, even if I had
That
to do it
one month,
online.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think
we're
anyone
leaving
will
on the
come
9th,
up
we're
with
flying the night of the 9th and arriving in the
Yeah, cause
morning
even
of
if I
the 10th.
had, cause that robotics is on Saturday, so I'll be home.
Well,
I don't, I
3
wouldn't miss
separate
that much
weeks,
more
one in
school.
San Jose when we first get there, one in the
Right,
northwest
get
February
corner.
10th.
Great.
The second week and then on the
And then we need to
southwest
try to
corner.
firm up the May,
Yeah.
May 9th meeting.
All my principals used to get cranky.
Well,
Should be really fun.
sometimes I get drug out.
I've been there, we've been there 3
Sometimes I
times.
get
It's
so
seriously
used to-
my favorite place.
Wow, I've never been there.
Well, outside or something.
Awesome.
Did we decide on something?
I
Well,
think,
May 9th, does that work for everyone? We did decide on February 10th.
Okay,
May 9th
February
is
10th.
great. May 9th is fine.
Oh, hold on. I don't wanna have, it's softball season, if I miss something, I'll be in trouble. Oh yeah, May 9th looks open for now.
TRS.
We can't change that, I've already got it in my phone.
Okay.
Only if you stuff us in a suitcase for San Juan.
Yeah.
Not me, I'm not too
Sorry,
hot
what
there.
was the next
I'll
date?
melt.
May
May
9th.
9th. Yeah,
That's a
and the
beautiful
reason
place to
we
go.
wanna
though.
firm that one up so
Yeah.
far is so
Oh,
the
wow.
actuaries
Friday,
can
May 9th.
look better.
That's fine.
No, it's good.
I'm good.
I actually spoke at a national conference in San Juan, Puerto Rico. They paid for my full trip.
Oh, no, this is San Jose, Costa Rica.
State
Costa
golf the
Rica.
following week,
Oh.
but
Yeah, I haven't been,
we'll
so,
go Friday,
Sounds
I'm
like 9th will work.
back in town.
9th works.
yeah, that's work.
9th is good.
Perfect, okay. And then just an FYI, look ahead at August 1st, October 3rd, and December 5th. October is always an important one as well because of our actuaries.
Right.
But the other ones are easier to move around, because our actuaries come in October and they also work with PERS.
Is that slated for the 10th? right now?
Which one?
October?
October
3rd.
3rd.
Oh, the 3rd, okay.
Yeah, I think the rest of the dates look good for me.
All right. Then it's time for public comment, if you had anything to add, since you're our only public.
There is one person online,
Oh,
but they've been online, most of the time.
okay. Anything from our computer person?
David. Doesn't look like it.
All right.
Yep, he just,
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
all right.
No, thank you.
That was a no.
Yeah,
So we changed the meeting date to February 10th, just make sure you mark that, and we're on to our executive director's report.
all right, Madam Chair, members of the board, behind tab 5 in your packet is the executive director's report. As far as the staff update goes, and when I wrote this, I hadn't been notified yet that Denise was planning to retire this month. So we will have a vacancy coming up, but at the moment, we currently have none. As far as operations update goes, I wanted to just sort of, give you some information about how things have been changing for our Ready, Set, Retire presentations and our TRS 101 presentations. Every fall, our benefit officers go out and we usually try to hit at least 6 different schools, sort of geographically separated, so we hit pretty much every geographic area of the state, roughly. And then we also go to wherever the annual conferences for MFPE. But our in-person attendance this year was really terrible. I mean, we went to Great Falls, and I think it was less than 15 people showed up, or 4. Yeah, we had more staff because we were sending some staff to train. I think that particular one, we had more staff there than people that showed up to actually attend. The annual conference, the numbers as far as people that attended the TRS presentations were really down this year. Do you remember, Darla, offhand, those were really small as well?
Yeah, both John and I had 11 or 12 or so the first day and 4 or 5 the second.
Yeah,
How are they organized? Sorry.
well, it's,
You want me to talk to it from a teacher perspective? We have to, you fill it out online, it's like, so you sign up for courses. So, and I don't even know, cause I know I tried to sign up for some online ones just to look, and that thing was hard to follow, like to
yeah,
figure
so
out where
Yes,
things were.
so
Well, just
not
the
not
whole
our
conference.
presentation.
Like if you were gonna try to find that, I wonder if people just couldn't, if they were trying to do 2 different things at the same time, and was like, some of that was kinda hard to find.
Yeah,
So
so
that could
there's
be part of it.
2 different things going on. For the 6 that we go to around the state, not including the annual conference, we work with MFPE and a lot of times whoever the clerk is in the district we're going to, and we provide notification through that
So
meeting.
it's a specific school that you're,
Yes, and the surrounding area. And like if we go all the way to Wolf Point, we want to try to pull in, some of the surrounding area towns as well.
and so you're working with the business manager and then the union
Yes,
to
the
try and-
MFPE rep out there, and Kim will reach out to them, and they'll send out emails and let people know when the meetings are. We have it on our website. I mean, nothing has really changed in that regard. That's the way it's always been as far as how those are scheduled.
And then are staff missing work time to attend this?
No, they're in the evening.
In the evening?
Well,
Okay.
they are because they travel, they're in person, so they have to drive out to Wolf Point. When we go that far out in the eastern part of the state, we usually piggyback it with another one, so that you're looking at 2 or 3 nights in a hotel and a couple of days of travel. That's just the facts of living in Montana.
Yeah, no, I got it.
But nothing about that has changed, other than, I would say, since COVID, participation in any of those kind of in-person things has really dropped off. Now, the annual conference is a little bit different in that, it's completely ran by MFPE, and then I think they have all kinds of different providers that are presenters, and like you said, you have to sort of select
It might have been hard to find.
what you want to attend. But I mean, that was still better than any of the in-person ones. And I guess the point I'm gonna trying to make, and it's just causing all kinds of questions, is our webinars are way better attended than the in-person roadshow in the fall. I mean, I'm not proposing necessarily that we don't go to the annual conference, but I think I'm really considering not sending staff out for those 6 that lead up to it, and instead just do one webinar each month for 3 months or 4 months in a row, and then still send a couple people to the annual conference.
Sean, I was just gonna say that. I think it is a product of the staff doing such a good job with webinars, with answering people's questions, that they really don't have to show up in person. I really think it's because of the hard work in the last 2 or 3 years.
And what's on the website, like,
Yes.
the Retirement 101, all those things are really
I do
helpful.
too.
Yeah, and people are more used to, because we all had to get there, right? We all had to
We're there overnight.
get better at Teams and Zoom and
Yeah.
webinars, and then understanding that that's just how it is.
Is the webinar just typewritten information, or can you access it by Zoom?
No, it's a Zoom. It's a Zoom meeting. And they take live questions. It's just like one of these meetings. I mean, if you were sitting at home right now, you could ask
Have a glass
questions.
of wine.
Sure.
You can raise your hand and ask a question.
Yeah.
So,
It's the best kind, Karen. Exactly.
so
We do-
yeah,
we're
it's
all
just
into
not
that.
really worth the travel expense and the time out of the office to do the travel, to only reach a fraction of what we are reaching anyway through webinars.
Yeah, I think, and the webinar that just happened the other day was a bunch of people had
Yes.
a great experience with it.
So Darla sent me some of the numbers. So we had 2 TRS 101, which is for early career teachers, webinars, one this week, one last week, and we had 92 attend those in total. And then we did 2 of the same, Ready, Set, Retire, which is for people that are 5 or less years away from retirement. We had 147.
Wow.
Do you get any feedback on what those people are utilizing from those meetings, or what their experience is with that?
We do a survey, at the end of the presentation, and ask, we are always looking for ways to improve, but they're almost always very highly rated, all the various categories.
And I've done them in person and online, and have had, I don't know, I was probably only 15 years in and went to one, just so that I knew what they were like. And then I just did a webinar, not like, I didn't do it, I will say that. A friend of mine did the webinar and loved it, got so much out of it. And she's within 5 years of retirement, 3 probably.
Yeah, I think this would be something worthwhile to get out to the regional superintendent meetings, to have them advocating for this. I know that within my organization, they're getting a lot of their TRS information from outside vendors coming in and talking about what retirement looks like in Montana. And a
Who
lot of
would
my.
that be?
Yeah,
Our 457 provider,
like in Power or something like that.
so John Brown.
Oh, yeah.
have or.
It varies by district.
And-
Yeah.
But I think he does a good job, but I think TRS staff is going to have a greater knowledge of this and be able to provide my staff with better information, and I don't know that they know about those opportunities, and when we're talking about my more senior staff, they're more likely to do an in-person than an online. And they're moving towards online stuff, but I'm trying to figure out why there's so low attendance, and I'm wondering if they don't know about it, I don't know, I'm hearing all of this, and the online's great, and it's working well, and I just don't know
Are
if
they
it's.
union members? I mean, because we
Yeah.
hear a ton, like we do,
Yeah,
we get lots of
yeah,
emails
cause I
about it.
always wanted to attend one just for
Emails
curiosity's
and
sake.
social media,
Just-
and that's, I mean, I hear about it all the
Just to see it.
time. Like, I don't know how they wouldn't know.
Some didn't.
Yeah, really,
I've got about
Yeah, I
half of
understand.
my staff is, half of my
that
staff
doesn't
isn't.
read.
Yeah, read it, I have no idea, I'm not going to vouch
Just
for what they read and what they don't read.
like,
I know, I'm
Interesting.
really surprised
Yeah.
that the in-person ones are,
When they have
So poorly
steadily declined. I mean, so this is not a total anomaly, because the year prior, I mean, it was quite a bit fewer people attended in person than the year prior. You know, it's, for whatever reason, it's really just sort of been nosediving, the in-person attendance. And it doesn't really seem to matter which part of the state we go to. Now, certain districts, John Ellis shared with me, when they go there, their district requires them to attend. And at that point, you know, you get quite a few, but not very many districts do that.
yeah, I can imagine if the conversation was, TRS is coming to Shelby, you guys are all going to this, you need to hear this information, that would be my reaction to it.
You know, we have a prep day in School District 6 on Wednesday afternoon, and that would be a time that I think the district would say, hey, everybody come in and talk with. I think.
I make them all attend the 457 stuff.
Yeah, I'm just sharing what's been happening.
Okay, I just,
You know, so we don't have to make a decision right now about it, because, you know, it's not until next fall again. But I just, you know, it really has dropped off, and it's a trend. It's not like it's a one-off thing that just happened this year.
the third Monday in September, come up to Shelby and you'll have 50 people at least, if I don't get Cut Bank and Conrad and Sunburst and Delaire and Chester to come to town as well.
Yeah, and we can try to promote it, you know, through the superintendent's groups as well, you know, because my staff sets the schedule with MFPE ahead of time to get the dates and the rooms locked up and all that, and then we try to inform everyone in the area we're coming, and but I see.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that when we planned it, we were in Cut Bank and we sent the information to Shelby also, and we didn't have anybody from Shelby come, which is fine. We did send it to Rob Watson, who sent it out to all of the superintendents as well. So I know that we're sending the information out. I think so many people are like, can I do this on Zoom? And we do it right after school. We started at 4, so people don't go home and then we lose them that way. So the biggest group that we had was in Glendive, which is, for me, I have not ever been to Glendive. I've lived in Montana my entire life, so. But yeah, we had more people in Glendive than any place. It kind of went steadily downhill from there, but
Pretty small.
How many
yeah.
in Glendale?
We had 16 in Glendive.
It's close to Moss City too, I mean, it's
So,
not
yeah.
super close.
It's probably not all the teachers in Glendale.
Yeah, so when the conversation is, Stefan probably made him go, but when the information is going out, it's only going to the union members, the non-union members or the administration is not informed about this type of thing
It sounds
occurring?
like
No, Rob Watson.
Rob Watson sent it out to all the superintendents. And then we send
So
it
it
to
is
our members, and it's
monthly.
on your website.
Okay.
And TRS does I've seen Facebook posts about it or something.
Yeah.
something online, maybe it was.
And we also, when we advertise them, we also tell our presidents, this is not just for union members, you can send it to
Yeah.
all of your staff, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do a better job of reading.
And I think like in Billings, that's where you get a lot of people, because Billings teachers, it's in their contract that if the conference is in Billings, they're required to go to the conference. I think our numbers in general were down at the conference this year because it was in Bozeman, which is ridiculously expensive, as you all know. And
Yeah.
next year it's in Missoula, so I think we may potentially, I think Missoula, our numbers are down just because it's on that side of the state, so, which is more helpful to people in Hernan Pablo area, but.
Right, well, if you come down to Missoula, yeah, then you go to Billings.
Yeah, but anyway, so there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not suggesting we don't still do the presentations at the annual conference. But that, Kim, you can probably speak to this, that conference has changed pretty dramatically since COVID as well, because now you can do a lot of it online.
Yeah.
And where prior to that, you had to be there in person, was the only way
And
you
if
could
you
get
can
those
do, if
credits.
you're gonna do it online and at PE, you might as well do it at the conference, you might as well do it online all the time.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah,
from a
it is
cost
a
and
hybrid
time,
now.
right.
yeah, from a cost and time perspective, online makes more sense, honestly.
And safety
Especially-
wise, travel.
Well, travel and
Yeah.
ease, cancellations are easier. If you don't show up to a website,
Yeah.
you're not spending any money, it's just time.
Yeah.
It's just annoying, honestly, but that's about it.
What if it was more of a, sort of an on-demand thing where you say, this is something we can do, let us know if you think you'd like us to come out?
We have 365 employers, Dan.
Yeah.
Well, that happened in Ronan once. We had someone was there and they actually came to our auditorium. We did us and Polson. They were in our auditorium. That was, I think that was 2015.
Yeah, we do get requests, and we, to the extent we can, we'll try to accommodate them, and if we can, we'll point them to one of the upcoming webinars that we have.
Okay.
Yeah, they actually asked me if I would do one. I
Yeah,
was like, why would I do
What?
it?
Yeah.
Because they've offered us $30,000 to leave this year, and so there's lots of people like, oh, should we, or,
Yeah.
yeah.
so,
Will you talk about it? No, I'm not talking about it.
so anyway, I guess to be continued, I just wanted, you to be aware, and it's unfortunate in some ways, but, maybe just the way things are going, as, just the way business is done nowadays. The next section is the legislative update. At the time, I sent this out about 2 weeks ago. I looked again yesterday and this morning. There's our bill text is now available for our two bills, and there are a few others, but none of the ones that are sort of mystery bills. They're still in drafting. These two, the Enacting the Retired Educators Teaching Again to Inspire the Next Generation Act. Can you guess who the bill sponsor is?
Lou Jones.
Yes, and enacting the Granting Unique Involvement for Dedicated Educators Act are, I know who the bill sponsors are. I have a pretty good idea what one of those bills is. And I think what it is, if you think about our emergency hire statute, where you can hire someone for up to 3 years if they meet all the qualifications, like they had 27 years when they retired, the district advertised the position and were unable to fill it, they can work for up to 3 years with no limit on the amount they can earn after only receiving 2 benefit payments instead of doing the whole 120-day break. I think Representative Jones wants to do something similar to that, specific to the Office of Public Instruction for about a 5-year period of time, just because of how, his words, not mine, how sort of decimated the staff is there. And with the new administration coming on board, I think he wants to do something targeted to help OPI sort of rebuild. And they think that using some retired TRS members might be the way to do that, at least in part. The other one, I believe has something to do with professors in the education schools, like the education departments. So I think the idea was that there's not enough professors to teach new teachers. I don't actually believe that that's the case. I worked with the Office of Higher Ed, and we did a survey of the education department heads at the various universities and colleges, and that doesn't really seem to be a thing. So I advised him, that it's probably not a great idea to bring that bill, but he's gonna bring whatever he wants. That's kind of what I know about those two. The rest of them, I really have no idea. The generally revised pension laws, a lot of times those are just placeholders in case something comes up during the session. Some of them will have, it certainly will be bills, and I really won't know what they are until they're published. I shared with you, when the governor did his November 15th budget announcement, that there is a fairly substantial bill likely coming through the governor's office via, I'm not sure who the bill sponsor will be yet for sure, but in that bill, there's about a $300 million placeholder for potential funding for pensions if our investment returns were less than expect, or if the inception to date return is less than our assumed rate of return for 2 consecutive years, then we could potentially access up to half of that amount, that 300 million per year. And when I say half, it's 25% TRS, 25% PRS, that would take the first half, and then if it happened again, you could potentially access another 25 and 25. The other part of that bill, if it remains the way I last saw it, which again, you never know until they're actually published, would also have an additional 0.2% each year for 10 years employer contribution. And I think that's probably the thought process there is the state of Montana is going to throw $300 million in general fund here that could be available for economic downturn. The local governments and locals need to do their part through employer contributions. I assume that's going to be the argument, or at least the way it's portrayed. And that funding would actually help TRS immediately. So that's additional contributions coming in. It's going to just pay off our unfunded liability quicker. Those are all things that would be healthy to the system, provided they pass.
Well, but with our surplus, couldn't you, when that bill gets drafted, couldn't you go in and amend it without the stipulations and have them just put the money into the retirement systems?
Oh, yeah, so,
That would be amazing,
member
wouldn't
Brownie, certainly, once it's in the body's hand, they can.
It's a living document.
They can amend it to do all kinds of things.
You must have some friends still there.
A few.
Can I speak about 942 and 946?
Sure.
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of time talking with Lou about both of those bills. And I think 942 is the idea of going from 3 years to 5 years for teaching retirees.
For everybody. The current, okay.
Yeah, your current teachers. A lot of them are hitting that 3-year point right now, and the pipeline as far as getting new teachers, if we're not hiring in state, we're going to have to go international to bring teachers in, and so the goal is to get an additional 2 years. And so I'm pretty sure that's what 942 is going to look like. As a superintendent, I'm supportive of that. I think, I would hope that we're looking at it, say, hey, how do we make sure that we're getting enough funding into TRS to allow that to occur? Now, whether we need to charge districts more or how we need to get the additional funding to make that work, I don't know, but I know on the ground, I think that's going to be very important for our North Central, our Highline type schools. I think that's going to be very important.
But then in another 2 years, you're gonna come in and ask for another 3. I mean, it just keeps kicking the can. I don't know what the solution is, but we can't continue doing that.
I believe that's what that bill is going to say, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
99% sure that that's what that bill is going to say.
Is 946 then the one that's
946
specific
is
to
OPI. OPI has struggled over the past few years. There's a lot of, I'm gonna call it a brain drain at that organization. I think there's a lot of talented people that would be willing to come back and try and possibly right that ship. But they're not going to come out of retirement to do it. And I think this might be a way to get people to come back, try and get that organization back to where it needs to be for a short period of time. And so yes, that is allowing retirees to come back for up to 5 years and work for OPI and continue to collect their.
Does that reduce the break in service, or is that not one of the things?
So it would, I mean, I talked quite a bit with Representative Jones about that specific one. And the way I believe he'll at least propose it is that the same as the 732, where you have to just have received at least 2 benefit payments, which means basically 61 days versus the regular break in service.
Which we
is
can use our
120.
tax deferred status potentially.
It's not any different or worse than what we're currently doing under 732, which is the other emergency hire provision. Yeah. So my understanding, at least the last language that I had seen working with Representative Jones about the OPI specific bill, is that it would be very similar to what we currently have in statute in 732, except it's targeted to OPI, and instead of 3 years, you can do it for up to 5 years.
And the point behind that is at least 1 term.
Right.
Right.
To get through
So Susie's term
the
is 4
new,
years.
right, the new superintendent of public
Yeah.
instruction, get them through their first 4-year term and sort of rebuild, I think was his idea. And it does have a sunset date of 5 years out, like 2031, I believe, if it ends up, being what I think it's gonna be. But with all that said, the 1927-32, the current statute that allows people to do it for up to 3 years if they're for a class 2 or class 3 district, that initially was supposed to go away in 2013, and then, obviously it's 2024 and we're still doing it. But we do get the combined employee contributions plus the state the 2.49% we usually get from the state. The employer that uses that has to pay all of that, so it's 20.11% they pay to TRS, and we're not accruing any additional liability. So, it works out okay for us. I mean, to the extent, 1 or 2 people retire sooner than they otherwise would have because they know they're gonna be able to work under that provision, those contributions get chewed up pretty fast. But with that said, if they just actually retired when they retired and this happened to be there, then their benefit payments would have been the same.
So
I think with,
can I just ask a question?
Yeah,
So these people retire and then they come back, like on our salary schedule, do they have to they're not gonna come back in where they were, so they're gonna take a hit and pay too? I don't
so the
understand.
ones that I've hired have been from other school districts. They've not been my employees
Yeah.
beforehand. They've been working at other school districts.
Still,
They've
you'd be
retired
doing
from
the
those
same
school
job,
districts.
but
And I'm
much less
pulling
money.
them into my district to.
Yeah, like
to
if I
work.
retired from Calswell making $87,000 or whatever and go to your district.
Well, I don't pay 87.
No, exactly, so would I start out as a new teacher too? Like,
No,
where would I start?
So we have some agreements
I
with
just am
with our
curious
union.
what-
So-
what-
so our-
what the-
our- Yeah, our
what's the
setup,
good
we
for the
recognize,
teachers
we
here?
recognize 5 years and then half a year for every additional year of experience. So if you have,
30. so-
yeah, if you've got 30 years, you're gonna get 5, and then 25, half of that, you're gonna get 13. So I'm gonna put you at step 18 in Shelby, and whatever education level that you're at.
And you're
I just don't-
receiving your full benefit, so.
Yeah, still, but I'm doing a job for less than I used to do my job for.
Yeah, I mean,
Same job.
correct,
I
but
did,
kinda
I'm
like
just
being a
looking
con-
at it
it's
as,
kinda like being
from
a
a teacher's,
contractor.
and why would I
Makes
go
sense.
take another job and do the same thing I used to be doing for much less pay, even though now I'm getting my I don't know, I just. I
The folks
don't,
that
we're
I
not
have,
solving
they-
any
they-
problems for teachers.
They're very happy, they
I'm
really
sure.
enjoy what they're doing, they wanna be a part of the system, they wanna work with kids, and this is an opportunity to continue to do that, and
So why did they retire in the first place?
That's my.
Well, with the
don't think
benefit
they were
and
in-
the salary, you're making more money.
so I don't think they were entirely happy with
Well, what
the
about
situation they
tax
were in.
wise though?
With your pension and,
yeah, so, I mean,
They retired from the system that they were not happy that
I
they
can
were
say
in.
so much.
They still wanted to work with kids, but they didn't want to work in that
Shut up.
system anymore. They retired. I had an opening. I said, please come and work for me. do not have a teacher right now for this group of kids.
So this
would you be willing to
benefits
do this?
well-managed teacher agency systems and hurts the other ones that aren't as well-managed.
It does.
Potentially.
Well, I mean, it's a matter, so we've been doing this, I do a report on this every 2 years to the legislature. This is, you're talking in a really big year, maybe we have, between 12 and 18 teachers work in the whole state, working under 732.
I've got one of them.
It's nothing.
I've had two.
This is, I mean, it is a drop in the bucket, and it's 100% for when they can't find somebody, they certify to us, they advertise it, we verify that they advertise it with OPI. It only applies to class 2 and class 3 school districts, so the smaller, like all the double A's are excluded and some of the A's are excluded. And they have to have 27 years, they have to have retired with at least 27 years. So, there, in previous sessions, there have been ideas and bills to try to drop that, it used to be 30 years, they wanted to go to 25. We really fought 25 because, we were quite certain that we would have some leakage, because in TRS as a tier 1, you can retire with 25 years at any age. You can be literally 50 years old, retire from TRS, right? And then
That would be me.
yeah, and so at least pushing it out to 27, that helped us, and it's, the proof's in the pudding. Hasn't been this huge influx of people working on this
If
statute.
it was more widespread, we'd be worse off, because we're better off if you hire a brand new teacher and they're in the
Yes.
system for 30 years. It's
Correct.
better off for
Right.
our system.
It is, but it's not something that is overutilized.
Yeah.
Unless you can't find somebody to hire.
Yeah, and the situation for me, if I wasn't allowed to do that,
Right.
I would be going international.
Right.
That's where I would, because I can get a teacher, but I have to go international.
You just fly to the Philippines and grab a few?
I don't fly there, but there's a lot of online interviews that are taking place.
Well, you just need to contact all the AA districts that are getting rid of all their end teachers and say, hey, we've got some job
It's
openings.
those double A teachers like to live in their double A towns.
That's good.
They don't like, they tend not to.
It's interesting,
Like to come to
we're
my
just
small
in
district.
two different worlds. It's
And
so
for their
crazy
double
to
A
me.
salaries.
Yes.
I think we've done a really good job of trying to compete with that. We're up to $40,000 on our base, which I know is still not great, but I think
It's a beginning.
we're working on making sure that we're able to compete even in our smaller schools.
So will be an interesting legislative session, which is good.
So where are we going to stand on those two? I'm just,
Well, until we
as
have,
I'm on the
until
board
we
here,
have a bill
I need to know
draft
what I'm
to review.
supposed to say, because it's important to me, but I
Yes.
also,
So
I've also
this is a
been
good
in-
opportunity for me to explain to you how the process will work
Okay.
for TRS
Okay.
purposes.
Okay.
So right now, we know we are in support of our own 2 bills.
Yep.
The rest of those bills are not available to review, they're not published yet. So what will happen is, once they are available, I will meet with the legislative committee, which is Dee Brown and Dan Trost. And we, between the 3 of us, will determine the board's position on pending legislation. And that gets published on our website, and it's updated, every couple, well, actually kind of pretty much anytime action is taken on a bill, it's updated on our website. Certainly, if you have questions about where we stand on something, you can call me at any point or time. If you plan to go and testify, you'll be testifying as the superintendent at Shelby, not as a TRS board member.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I think when we meet on those bills to discuss them, we always look at how is it going to affect the whole, and what is going to be the long run. So it's always to the benefit of TRS.
Fiduciary responsibility.
It is, but we don't, we also don't have blinders on. Last session, the board brought bills to sort of help with this situation. I know full well that districts are having a very hard time recruiting teachers, new teachers, and so that's why some of the things we did last session happened, where we increased the allowable earnings limit, we decreased the break-in service requirement, and certainly, we're gonna be open to at least looking at these other ideas.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
but we still have our individual rights.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. Okay, so Madam Chair, that's the legislative update. Moving on to C, the SAVA SJ4 update. I included in your packet sort of the the final findings of the SJ4 study on, what page is this, page 28 of your packet. Really the sort of the, and this is right out of their report, I didn't paraphrase it or anything like that, but essentially, somewhere in here, it was a pretty favorable statement. Where did I put that?
Top of the,
Oh, yeah, the very top bullet, sorry. So, yeah, I mean, this was basically what they said, that the two largest systems, PERS and TRS, have been operating for generations, and essentially, they gave us our funded ratio, which PERS is 76%, TRS is 74%, and that we've exceeded the actual market rate of return on average has exceeded the inception to date return, or the assumed rate, going back all the way to 1994. So really a pretty favorable sort of finding from the committee. They did have two recommendations, and I wanted to just, talk to the board about those. So that's the two SJ4 recommendations. First one was to implement a yearly survey of active members and add a question about the retirement system to public employee exit interviews. And I mean, I certainly shared our survey results with this committee on a couple different occasions, and I utilized those numbers from our survey reports in some of the presentations I gave to this committee over the interim, and which is likely why they put this in here, because at least last interim, PERS did not have any of those kind of surveys and couldn't point to those kind of numbers, but I know they are going to have them going forward. So from our perspective, I think we already satisfy that requirement. We do it at a minimum every 2 years. We do an active member survey, and sometimes we'll do a targeted retired member survey.
Director Graham, can I ask a question about that? I'm a little unclear as to why the state of Montana would want to do their own survey and not just accept ours. It seems like, honestly, hubris with government overstepping and extra expense for nothing.
So like I said, I think this one was targeted more towards public employees.
Okay.
Retirement system, because they didn't have those numbers, but they are on their own working on doing this survey similar to what we do.
Has anybody suggested that they just accept ours?
Well, they're not, ours are for teachers.
I know.
I'm talking about.
Right, not for the public employees, but didn't you just say that the state of Montana is looking at doing their own surveys of teachers as well?
No.
Oh.
Well, no, I think that what they're doing is for the public employees. The state of Montana
Which is including teachers, yeah, okay.
They're copying us.
To some degree, yes, but I think you're reading too much into this. So this bullet, I think, is targeted toward public employee retirement system members.
Okay.
Because we already are getting the data for teachers.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the second item that they recommend is that we consider adding a requirement to do regular stress testing, either to our board policies or even statutes, similar to our requirement for doing experience studies. And I struggle with that one because we did a full-on risk analysis. It's been probably 5 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago. And we spent a significant amount of money on it, and we did nothing with that data. I mean, and that was prior to ASOP 51 going into effect, which requires us to have risk considerations in our actuarial report. Certainly our evaluations satisfy the requirement of ASOP 51, which is the risk analysis. I mean, we really did not utilize, we didn't learn anything new from the full-on risk analysis besides what's already in our actuarial evaluation, and it was expensive.
Yeah.
And remember at the time, I asked the board if we wanted to put that on an every 4-year cycle, similar to what we do with experience study, and the response at that time was, well, let's wait and see if or how we use this information, and we really don't. Or didn't. So
What does a stress test involve?
it's, so
Like if
probably the easiest.
something like disaster, something bad happens.
Returns are lower than.
It's, yeah, I mean, it's similar in a lot of respects to our experience study that we do every 4 years, except for it's a little bit more targeted in that you'll run various scenarios, and you can pick those scenarios. You can say, well, what happens if we go, 4 years, at 5% return, followed by 10 years of exactly 7.3% return, followed by, but I mean, the results are pretty obvious. I mean, if the order of return matters, the magnitude of the difference in the return versus the assumed rate matters. It's not really all that hard to figure out that if we have a 0% return for 10 years in a row, followed by the assumed rate, we're gonna be in trouble. So, I don't know.
Although, just a general comment about that, I think there's a propensity for public institutions. Remember that study that showed that how education systems and state systems have the worst opinion of their own management? Well, if you overreact to a bad year or two and then try to fix it by doing something inappropriate, the Board of Investments has a very, very long-term approach. And I'll give you a quick example of what I find fascinating in terms of these numbers. Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett's company, has been around since 1952. In that period of time, they have underperformed the S&P 500 about 70% of the years. But in the 30% of the years that they outperform the market, because they stick with a long-term strategy, they outperform by so much that their total return is nearly double what the S&P 500 is. So the only point I'm making here is that it's not incumbent upon us to overreact by making some new legislative provision, in my opinion. We have to have more faith in the long-term capacity of the Board of Investments to just sustain our total return.
So I guess I'm not I'm not even asking the board to make any kind of decision at this point in time on doing a new or additional full stress test. I just want you to be aware this was one of their recommendations. I may hear from the legislature that they want to see this, or there could even be a bill this session to require us to do this. Again, I did share with them that we have those risk considerations. There's a full risk section within our valuation, and I pointed them towards that. And maybe that ultimately will be enough for them, but it's possible that they could require us to do it. It certainly can be done, and it's nothing to be scared of doing. I mean, it's just a cost it would be a cost to the system that, I don't know how much value really ultimately you get out of it. The committee, from this HJ4 committee, along with previous other committees that I've been involved with, they really sort of want to have this, whether it's a dashboard or a report or something that sort of tells them when it's time to act. They want something that just says, oh, you need to do something now. And I tried to explain to them, well, that's my job. If we think we're in trouble, we will be bringing a bill to fix it. But they certainly want to try to do their due diligence as well. So I don't think there's any ill will or any bad intentions out of any of the studies or the recommendations. They just really want to, they want to know sooner than later if they can, but they're, anytime you're doing multiple, thousands of different scenarios, you're gonna get thousands of different answers, so.
I think a lot of it is, over time, we were just talking about this, term limits. We have to just educate.
Yeah.
Sean, can you remind me what we currently do in our report? Is it using the 10-year treasury or something like that versus our assumed actuarial rate of return? Is that one of the tests that we do now?
So what's in our report currently is there's an asset volatility ratio, there's a net cash flow as a percentage of market value of assets percentage, and then there's a liability maturity measure. In addition to, earlier on in the report, we every single year they'll do where would we be sitting if we had a 0.5% higher return, a 0.5% lower return? Where would we be if we had a 1% higher return versus a 1% lower return? Yep. Okay, any other questions on that section? Okay, then finally, or not, I shouldn't say finally, I guess I have a couple more. We've referred to it a couple different times already today. I did go present our actuarial results to the Board of Investments last week. Those were all, obviously it was great news, and basically went over there and told them they're doing a great job, can keep it up. They'll take even a little more if they can get it. They always ask, you know, me and whoever it's now Bill Hollahan, the director at PERS, you know, if there's anything that their staff can do better, and they want to know about, you know, how the relationship is between their staff and us. And of course, you know, it's easy to respond that, I mean, anytime I need anything at all, all I have to do is pick up the phone, and Director Bill is always available. And the same is true between myself and the director of PRS. You know, we pick up the phone, we talk weekly for sure. Sometimes it's almost daily. So communication lines are open and working well. Under Section E, the LFC update. The update on that is that their last meeting of the interim is coming up on December 17th. I inquired with them whether, I mean, I assume I have to go present on the 17th because it is in statute. However, they did have 4 members of the Legislative Finance Committee that sat in on that Senate Joint Resolution 4 committee. And so the question I posed them was, you know, are you having me come present, or is that going to count for that? And I haven't heard back. So likely I will have to go present on the 17th, which is fine. It's just part of the normal annual reports. And that is it.
Okay, another opportunity for public comment. Then we're moving on to our strategic planning.
All right, so Madam Chair, members of the board, behind tab 6 is our strategic planning commitment worksheet starting on page 30. The red font are the updates to the plan. So the first one that we'll talk about is, you know, actively participate in the interim study, the SJ4. Like we just went over the results of that report. So that was completed on October 24th, 2024. I did participate in all of the meetings that they had for that committee over the last 2 years. The next one, towards the bottom of page 30, is implement a responsive web design. You all saw a prototype of that at a previous meeting. I can't remember if it was the last meeting or the one before that. That is underway, and both Darla and Jen are working on content for the responsive website design, and we are reviewing it. It likely won't roll out now because of legislative session until probably in the May timeframe. And part of the reason for that is ITSD actually puts a freeze on even our things as simple as our website rollout during the legislative session, because they don't want anything to happen that might jeopardize, you know, the legislature getting out of town as soon as possible.
Like February 1.
So those are the only updates. I'm happy we can certainly talk about any of the other ones specifically if you have any questions, but I don't think it probably adds a lot of value for me to regurgitate them to you.
Yeah. I really like how this is set out. We've talked about it before, but the goal and who's responsible and the time frame, I like that.
Another opportunity for public comment. I will just keep asking.
Thank you.
My duty's over here to move things around.
We are on to the board training, which is also a discussion item, but ethics and then the per diem.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, I guess I get to do this as well. So Denise normally would give this training, but she did text me early this morning, so I had time to go through and highlight kind of what I thought were some of the high points that we want to for sure touch on. And then in your packet itself, there is a questionnaire for the ethical conduct and conflict of interest on page 41 and 42 and 43 and 44 that I'll just have you remove from your packet and we'll fill out after we do the training, as well as the board member per diem election form on page 45. We need that, we'll fill it out once we get through the training. Okay, so as far as the ethical conduct and conflict of interest training, the TRS board has its own policy. That policy is up on the screen currently and it's in your packet. And our policy actually adopts the state ethics policy, but it takes it a little bit farther because you all have a fiduciary duty. So this policy that is really belongs to the TRS board is a little bit more, I would say heightened. It has a little bit heightened standards versus the overall state ethics policy, and that's a result of having fiduciary duties as board members. I won't go through all the definitions, but on page 2 of the policy, I want to just talk about a gift of substantial value is considered anything that costs $50 or more.
Director Graham, are we
yes.
sure that cup is not in that category?
I'm pretty sure. I'll bet you that whole set didn't cost $50.
It did too.
So, this is something for both as board members and staff. I mean, and this policy applies to both. It applies to all the staff at TRS as well as you all as board members. The thing I want to just make a point of is if you go to a conference, like the Teacher of the Year dinner is usually a pretty nice dinner. That is not a gift of $50. We pay for that. We pay for you to attend that conference. That's nothing to worry about at all. So, but if you were to get, I don't even know what, somebody gives you a golf bag because they want you to do business, wants TRS to do business with them, that would be a problem, okay? But meals and things that are provided by a conference you attend are not an issue. Private interest is a definition that's used throughout the policy, and that is an interest that's held by an individual that's ownership in a business, creditor interest, employment or prospective employment, ownership interest in real property, a loan or other debtor interest, directorship or officership in a business, or any other personal objective or advantage. So the term private interest is important because later on in the actual policy, it's used quite a bit. And one of the main things is you shouldn't be doing things that sort of promote a private interest based on your influence that you have at TRS. TRS personnel, as it's used in the policy, is any TRS board member, any temporary or permanent employee of TRS, and any person working under contract with TRS. So now I'm going to jump to page 3. And so on the top of page 3, it talks about appropriate conduct of duties. And basically what we're going to go over is TRS personnel, which would be board members and staff, shall uphold and enforce the fiduciary duties applicable to your role at TRS, shall perform all duties in a fair and honest manner, shall provide the highest quality in performance and advice, shall avoid conflict of interest or give rise to an appearance of conflict of interest, shall exercise prudent integrity in the handling and management of TRS assets in your care, shall refrain from financial and business dealings that would tend to reflect adversely on the individual's impartiality or interfere with the proper performance of the functions and duties, shall communicate promptly to the executive director, chief legal counsel, or appropriate board member or staff member if you think there's been a conflict of interest or a violation of this policy, and you should use care and discretion in the handling of confidential information received or maintained by TRS. So, kind of building on the fiduciary training that you've all been through, Your role at TRS, you need to take off, you take off whatever hat you had on before you came in here to the extent you can, and you put on your TRS hat as a fiduciary of the system. And sometimes, what might benefit you the most as a outside of TRS is not what necessarily should happen for the better of TRS as a whole. You just gotta, keep those hats separate to the extent possible. Then we get into what TRS personnel shall not do, which is in section 2 here. Scroll down a little bit. And, I'll just go through them quickly. You should not, use the prestige or influence of TRS to advance a private interest. Use retirement system time, facilities, employees, equipments to advance a private interest. Shall not use confidential information of TRS to advance a private interest. Shall not receive or accept compensation from a third party for performing duties that you would be required or expected to render in the regular conduct of your duties on behalf of TRS. Should not seek, receive, or accept directly any gift from any person who is doing or seeking to do business of any kind with TRS. Should not use your TRS position to influence the employment of a family member or friend with TRS or with any person or entity which does or seeks to do business with TRS. Perform any act or conduct that they know or believe may be subject directly or indirectly to control, inspection, review, audit, or enforcement by the TRS board. Participate in ex parte communication when we have a contested case going on. Publish or make statements to the media or legislators or legislative staff that purports to represent TRS's position or policy on any matter or subject before the board has formally adopted a policy or position on the matter or subject. In circumstances where the private views of a TRS employee or board member may be mistaken for TRS's position or policy, the TRS personnel shall make clear that he or she is expressing his or her personal views as a private citizen. So that's really speaking toward testifying at the legislature, which again is 100% allowed. It's just you disclose that it's either in your role as an individual citizen or your professional role outside of TRS. Shall not allow family, social, or other personal relationships to influence their conduct or judgment in the performance of their TRS duties. Shall not falsify any documentation, and shall not knowingly agree or to participate in, condone, or conceal any illegal activities. So that's a mouthful. There's a lot of things that you shall not do in compliance with the conflict of interest policy. Are there any questions before I move on? No? I guess just for your information, the rest of the TRS staff also takes this training. We do this once a year as well. I haven't scheduled it yet, but I will do that and get it scheduled here in the next week or two to go through this policy with them and also fill out the questionnaire. So then section D is fiduciary duties and prohibited transactions and self-dealing. So the loyalty exclusive benefit, TRS personnel shall perform their duties solely in the best interest of all TRS members. So that's, it's the fiduciary training that we've gone through before. Prudence, TRS personnel shall discharge their duties with the care, skill, prudence, and diligence under the circumstances then prevailing that a prudent person acting in a like capacity and familiar with those matters would use in the conduct of an enterprise of like character and with like aims, excuse me. So, like for member Trost, he has a fiduciary duty on the TRS board. As a board member of the Board of Investments, he also has a fiduciary duty with that board. They're, for all intents and purposes, pretty well aligned with one another, but he actually has a fiduciary duty to both boards, depending on which one he's sitting on at the time. Some prohibited transactions, except as otherwise provided by law, TRS personnel shall not cause the retirement system to engage in a transaction or business arrangement if they know or should know the transaction or business arrangement constitutes a direct or indirect sale or exchange sale, exchange, or leasing of property to any person for less than the adequate consideration or from any person or entity for more than adequate consideration. So you shouldn't game it either way. Lending of money or other extension of credit to a person without the receipt of adequate security. Furnishing of goods, services, or facilities to a person for less than adequate consideration. Transfer to or use by or for the benefit of any person of any assets of the retirement system for less than adequate consideration. Acquisition on behalf of the system of any employer security, real property, or loan. So essentially, you know, we need to be doing things at the fair market value. We shouldn't be trying to purchase things for way under what they're valued, and we shouldn't be trying to, well, actually, we should do that. We shouldn't be purchasing for way more than they're valued and selling things for way less than they're valued. Yeah, so.
We were just gonna let you make that
I know, I was like,
mistake.
oh, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Number 4 is prohibition against self-dealing. You know, we should not do any of the following: deal with the assets of the system for any purpose other than the legal and ethical conduct of TRS business, including your own private gain or the private gain of a family member or friend. We shouldn't, in any transaction or business arrangement, whether in your TRS personnel capacity, or any other capacity, act on behalf of a person or entity or representative party whose interests are adverse to the interests of the retirement system or the interests of all TRS members and their beneficiaries. That's quite the sentence. Receive any compensation or other consideration in any form from any person or entity with whom TRS has been or is involved in a transaction or business arrangement. The next section is on conflicts of interest, and I just highlighted a few things. I won't read this whole thing to you, but under number 2, when a conflict of interest arises, there's conflict of interest if TRS personnel has a personal private interest in any entity, business, property, or other thing of value, which may be the object of or involved in a TRS transaction or business arrangement with TRS. Has a relationship with a person, family member, or friend who has or reasonably would have be perceived as having a private interest related to the transaction or business arrangement of TRS. And then there's a whole other list of TRS personnel may not, and they're very similar to the ones we've already covered. Are there any questions about that section, rather than read this word for word to you?
Thank you.
Yes.
I had a
Section
principal
D,
like that one time.
yeah,
He'd hand you something and then he'd read it.
read it to you,
Like,
yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Section D, reporting requirements. So TRS personnel must disclose potential conflicts of interest to the executive director or chief legal counsel, as well as the nature of those interests, and annually complete and submit to TRS a questionnaire. And so your disclosure of any potential conflicts of interest is about to happen right now, where we're gonna have you fill out the ethical conduct conflict of interest annual disclosure statement that you took out of your packet. At the top there, you would, check board member, print your name. On the back of that first page, you do need to initial and then check the boxes. So Denise always says the right answer to all these questions is no, but the right answer is really whatever the right answer is. If you do mark yes in one of those boxes, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but we need to provide an explanation for why you marked yes, which essentially would be disclosing whatever your conflict of interest, your potential conflict of interest might be. And then you need to sign the bottom of that page 44 and date it. And I will collect those from you before we leave.
I filled mine out like 20 minutes ago.
Okay. I didn't take that long, did I?
No. I was exaggerating.
19, no, just.
Yeah, right, 18, 19. It felt like 20.
Yeah.
I filled mine out too and signed it.
All right. We could pass them around, I guess.
There's the other ones in there.
Okay, the per diem. All right, and then the next thing in your packet is, the board member per diem election form. And the, you know, the actual amount of per diem is included there, as well as the statutory references. Really what we need you to do is let us know, down at the bottom, you need to check one of those boxes. Either you are not employed by another public employer other than TRS. So if you are currently retired, maybe you would mark that one. Or if you are working for another public employer like a school district, you need to check whether you're gonna receive your regular salary and not receive the $100 per diem from TRS on a day that we have a board meeting and schools in session. Or that you want to receive the $100 and that you're not gonna receive your salary from your regular employer. Or that you're going to receive the the per diem and that you're gonna reimburse your employer for the salary paid while you were absent to perform services for TRS. I think usually it's either the first box or the second one. It's typically how you do it. And I know in Member Youngren's case, there's usually the August meeting. I think you're able to actually receive the per diem because you're not otherwise being paid for services.
Last year I got lucky in that one in May we didn't have school that day, but I used that for, service hours.
Yeah.
So I just did it. Just depends on the day.
Yep. Are there any questions about this one? All right, I'll collect that as well. And that concludes the board training, Madam Chair.
All right.
Mine was all included with the first
I already
packet.
Oh,
gave
she
it all.
said
Oh, you sent it in.
I didn't wanna
I
be ahead
sent
of
all
it.
of them.
Got it.
I'll go through them.
Okay, the next item is Tammy for the regular survivorship and adjustment and corrections.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, including in your packet for your information is a listing of those members that have retired in the months of September and October. We had during those 2 months 38 members retire with an average service of a little over 16 years and an average age of a little bit over 62 years of age.
I was shocked. I think the professor with 56 years, I probably took classes from him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, it was, I was surprised, but you had a lot of.
56 years.
Yeah, the average was low, but you had a lot of folks that were less than 10 years of service. But you had a couple there with, one with 40, little over 40 years and a professor with 56. Yeah, that's a long time.
What was that woman from Anaconda? How many years did she have?
Oh, I think she had 60, I believe.
Yeah.
67.
Was it 67? Yeah.
67?
Yeah,
She was in her 90s and she was still teaching.
teaching, yeah.
That'll be
Bless her pink and heart.
Yeah.
And I think.
Kept her
we
young.
did well,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and
Okay.
then,
So the next section is the legal counsel's report. Denise wanted me to let you know she was very sorry that she couldn't attend the meeting today, as this was going to be her last board meeting. But like I mentioned earlier, she came down with pneumonia on top of everything else she's been dealing with. Her last day at TRS will be next Friday, December 13th, and she just wanted me to convey to all of you how much she appreciated all your support over the years. So, sad to see her go, but she's dealing with some personal health issues that prevent her from continuing employment at TRS. Beyond that, as far as an actual legal counsel report goes, we do not have any current cases or anything that appears it's going to become a current or a future legal case. So that is a good place to be for the time being.
Awesome.
Well, tell her we're going to miss her, but we might see her out on the street.
Yep.
get well, we can get well.
Yeah,
Yes.
will do. And when she's feeling better, there's nothing to say she won't show up to one of our future meetings to
Good.
do a proper goodbye, so.
A member of the public.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
She can just sit there and make comments all day.
Yeah.
Every time we ask for comments, she can say something,
Good.
just to make us feel good.
That's right.
So Tammy, do we have a disability?
We do not.
Okay, we do not.
We do not.
So we don't have to close our meeting?
Nope.
Yeah.
And so we are very close to the end of time, but, applications for disability, we don't have any of those things. So I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yes.
Have a nice holiday season.